back underway. School facilities. We left off the morning, members of the committee. You might recall we were having a discussion about small projects, renovations, issues that arise for our districts with respect to projects that might modify a building. And we asked that some thought be given over the lunch hour with regard to where we might want to go with that. So I'm kind of inclined, committee, I think what I'd like to do, it's hard to stand up something like that over a lunch hour. Even though we've got the staff that can do it, they're dealing with other things, as in tomorrow they have a recalibration meeting and some things. So Tanya, I'm inclined to just get a little working group appointed that can maybe meet with you over a Zoom call to kind of draft something up that might be a remedy. Would that work? First of all, what do you think of that? If that might.
Mr. Chairman, it's certainly, within your purview to do that. We use those a lot in the Joint Education Committee. So there's precedent for it, and we're happy to staff that.
Yeah, thank you for that. So Senator Rothfuss, would you be willing to serve? And then any thoughts you have? I think we could put together a little bill that might. The thing we're dealing with, everybody, we've got 3 or 4 statutes that we've got to try to find an entry point and put something together that'll work. So my thought is, let's get the working group together, work with our legal counsel, and I think we could have a little bill, for the 3rd meeting. Does that sound all right?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Senator Rothfuss.
I think that's exactly the right approach. And I do think that a working group's appropriate because it is tricky to figure out which definitions, if any, we want to change and how we want to thread the needle, since the way the statute's drafted now with Title IX, this affects all capital construction, and we want to make sure that we're doing it in a nuanced way. So I think that's appropriate and support that.
Yeah, sounds great. So would anyone be interested in joining Senator Rothfuss and I in meeting with staff? Does anybody want another Zoom call?
Sure. They're fun.
Okay. So I've got several, the vice chairman said she would. Representative, did you say yes? Representative Heff or
that was me. If you want to.
Representative Geringer, why don't we go that way? Since I didn't know which one of you guys raised their hand, so. Okay, so that gives us some folks. Thank you. Thank you for stepping up on that. And I think Tanya, if you'd be willing to take a look at the calendar and see what might work for you, we can hopefully try to fit that in and get with you. And I'm Director, I'll make sure that you're informed of that too. I don't have any problem with you, Ms. Carlson, sitting in if you'd like. Okay. That's not mandatory, but I mean, it would be something you're sure welcome. And or any of the commissioners will get you the stuff. Okay, so that takes care of that. Committee, we had one of our superintendents heard us dealing with some issues this morning with regard to virtual education. And she was kind enough to get in her car and drive all the way down here. So even though we've kind of decided what we're going to do with respect to that piece of the bill this morning, remember we split it out and we're going to take it to the 3rd meeting. But Ms. Bollinger, would you please come forward? I want to give you an opportunity to simply give us an overview from Niobrara County, which is where one of our virtual schools exists. So good afternoon. Thanks for coming down. Pull that really close to you, the microphone, and you're welcome to address the committee. Thank you.
Hearing me. We did get in the BMW and drive down here pretty quickly to get here. So thank you for listening. My district in Niobrara County, we have the Wyoming Virtual Academy under our umbrella. It is the largest virtual academy out of all the programs in the state. And with that, we have a building specifically denoted for those individuals with the Wyoming Virtual Academy. It is staffed daily we have a registrar, we have a special education secretary, we have all sorts of individuals that work there daily. In addition to that group of individuals, we hold professional development in that building for the staff from WIVA. We do request that those teachers come in periodically. And we do hold a series of different types of trainings in that building. So in looking at, major maintenance, we actually do have a standalone facility denoted just for our virtual academy. So I'm not sure if the other programs do or not, but I do know in our building, in our district specifically, we do rely on that major maintenance money to ensure that that building, is kept up to code and that the types of repairs and stuff that that building would need that it requires. So I thought it worth sharing just because, again, I don't know if some of the other virtual academies have that, but in our district, we certainly do. And it is much needed. So just thought I would share that with you.
Thank you for that. First thing first, did I forget to ask you to state your name for the record for us? Yeah,
I am Dr. Penny Bollinger, and I'm the superintendent for Niobrara County School District.
thank you for that. I'm sorry
welcome.
about that.
That's okay.
Committee, any questions for Niobrara County? Senator Dockstader?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Bollinger, just curious, how many students are you running through that program in that building?
We have about 608 students currently enrolled in our Wyoming Virtual Academy.
Representative, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Bollinger. So how many of those students are local to Niobrara County and how many are from around the state?
We have students from every district in the state, and we have about, we had about 11 in Niobrara County. So not many comparatively to the population of the students in the Virtual Academy.
Okay. And so with those 11 that are in district, how much do they use your other facilities as well?
Well, we have several that they do elective classes with us. So those students are embedded. A lot of them are doing some of our electives, especially our high school students. They really like the CTE courses and those types of offerings.
Great. Thank you.
So Representative Bratton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And then what about your staff? Is your staff all from Niobrara, or do you have staff around the state?
All around the state, ma'am. They're all over. So
Interesting. And do they
yes.
follow up, Mr.
Nope,
Chairman?
that's all right. Go ahead.
Thank you. So, and then do they come in and use that facility, or how often do you have, meetings with all your staff? How does that work?
Representative Bratton, I would say that on the average, we have at least twice a year, we have full staff meetings. But there are times that certain groups of individuals are brought in to meet in that facility. So as far as an all staff meeting, I know that they try to have those people together at least twice a year, but throughout the year, different groups of individuals are brought in for different types of professional development.
Very good. Thank you.
Mr.
Anything
Chairman,
else? Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just curious about the number of square feet for that facility. You may not know it off the top of your head.
Senator Rothfuss, I don't, but I can certainly get that for this committee and get that to you.
Thank you.
So I've got one last question, and that is, how long has the Virtual Academy existed over in Niobrara County? It's been a while.
Yes, Mr. Chair, the original contract was 2009 and it has been with us ever since.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Senator McEwen has a question.
Senator McEwen, good afternoon. You are muted, sir.
Might work if I touch that button too, huh?
Yeah, there you go. We can hear you.
I kind of want to follow up on the question for square footage. I know we don't know how much, but how big is the building compared to, say, a regular school?
Ms.
The building
Bollinger,
is
go ahead.
not the size of a regular school. It's a 2-story building. It has 3 offices on the top level. Then it has a very large conference room. Then downstairs, I think there are 6 offices total on the downstairs level of that building. It's not comparative to a school building.
Okay, follow up, Senator.
So it is quite a bit smaller.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Representative Geringer, you had a question.
Yeah, just, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a thought occurred to me. What are your thoughts on how would you leave it alone? Would you modify it somehow? What we're talking about with major maintenance and virtual students? Do you have any suggestions for us?
Representative Geringer, I believe it should be modified. I have a very hard time saying that, with the size of the building, with the amount that the building is in use, I would recommend a modified scale on that, just due to, if you look at a building use compared to the use of this building, I can't justify 100% of that for a building that size and with that amount of use. But a modified scale would be excellent.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks for that. That does seem to make sense. So with what we're talking about, regardless of what we do, it will have a budgetary impact
Yes.
on you. And so how would you accommodate that given our overall ecosystem for funding right now?
Niobrara County has a great deal of challenges due to the regional cost adjustment and us only funded at 90%. We set the base for that for the entire state. So if another adjustment was made such as this without any funding, it would be challenging. I mean, we're already in a very challenging position as is. So yes, it would be challenging. We would have to get very creative.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming down. We will take up that issue in October at our October meeting. And it will involve probably a standalone bill with regard to virtual education. Just trying to get arms around what that means in terms of major maintenance everywhere. And so we'll have a good discussion at that point. I think that meeting's in Casper, by the way.
Perfect.
And appreciate you coming down.
Well, thank you, Representative, and thank you to all the members of the committee for allowing me to speak today.
You bet. Glad to do it. Director, I think you're next up. We get to take on an annual report and a supplemental budget. And since that's statutorily required of us to submit a budget every year, we better get to that. So. Welcome back, all of you.
Okay, thank you,
Great
Mr.
to see you.
Chairman.
Yeah.
I think you were given 3 or 4 handouts that'll go with this. A couple of them were updated, and the one is dealing with the safety and security budget. It's the big kind of tri-folded over sheet that shows the district priorities number 1 and 2. So we get to that point. Mr. Chairman, as you noted, we are required to bring before the commission every year. And that's Wyoming statutes 2115-119 and 2115-121, our annual report. And the annual report goes to the governor, goes to yourselves and the Joint Appropriations Committee, and then the School Facilities Commission, of course, the districts and citizens of the state to review. The 27-28 supplemental budget consideration is part of that. And our commission met last month in Ranchester and I guess approved the budget that you'll see today coming before you at the end of this report. We're tasked annually also to assess the adequacy of the school buildings and their facilities to prioritize needs. Talked a little bit about that with the committee a little bit earlier. But through that, we do on-site inspections. We have our annual meeting with the districts to try and update kind of where our assessment plan is sitting as we put this together, this plan. And there's schedules that need to come from the budgetary standpoint for this committee, and they're based upon condition schedule. And on that condition schedule, we look 5 years ahead from our building management system, the AIM system, to see when things may be coming up from a condition standpoint. And then that would go into the schedule for the commission and for your review for remediation. Capacity, we also look at that. We look at the history of that over time. And again, we look 8 years in that case into the future to see what may be the driver for a capacity project. The reason for the 5-year and the 8-year is that gives us time to assess it, go to the commission, to this committee to seek either design funds or design and construction funds for the design process to happen, which is generally at least a year or so, 18 months, and then the construction, again, another 18 months to 2 years to build the project. And through that process, it's about 5 years. So that's why we're forward looking on that to kind of see what the driver is in regard to capacity schedule. When we're asking for a new building, we're trying to forward look as to what that capacity may be. And when we design a school, we design that school to be full at 90% based on that 8-year look ahead, so that when that building's done, it was talked a little bit earlier. I think, Mr. Chairman, you mentioned the school was built and it was already at capacity and we had to go add. So lessons learned from the past. That's why we look forward and then do the 90% instead of at 100%. Each of the scheduled building and facility projects the commission looks at and make sure that the most cost-effective remedy is reviewed and delivered. Mr. Chairman, when you talked about this is probably the most vetted process, I can assure you that's one of the things that we get a question, and watching the floor debates, you get a question. I know when we go to Joint Appropriations Committee, they want to know, has this been through the Mercer process? And so, again, all of these projects are in the Mercer process, are completed that you'll see. And so, that really gives us the most cost-effective remedy to meet the educational needs. It may not be the cheapest, and sometimes that's confused remedy, but it's the most cost-effective to meet the educational needs of that school in that district. The SFC, in consultation with Select Committee and School Facilities, may recommend consolidating educational facilities between and among school districts, and the legislature shall approve any consolidation of educational facilities between 2 or more school districts. So one of the things that our commission has looked at, and this came through the Mercer process, I think you're probably, this was discussed last year with the committee, was Riverton. So we're looking at consolidating schools, consolidating areas within that school. We just did an extensive Mercer study here in Cheyenne, and we looked at consolidation of their elementary schools here through the Mercer process. That's something the commission can do standalone. But when we start talking about should we combine, say, Grable and Basin, which are 11 miles apart, 2 separate districts, should that be combined or not? The commission can make that recommendation, bring it to the legislature, and then it's up to you for consolidation of districts. Next page, Mr. Chairman, page 2 of 94. And Mr. Chairman, I'm kind of moving fairly quickly on this because generally at our commission meeting, this probably took an hour and a half, 2 hours. And then the budget was another hour and a half, 2 hours. And I try to get us out of here by 9 o'clock tonight. So if you guys got any questions in between, the committee has any questions, feel free to ask. So I'm going to kind of condense this overall. So.
Just because there's no limit to the time you have in the Senate on the floor. There are limits here. So yeah. Thank you, Director. Carry on. Spur that horse.
The School Facilities Division year-end review summary is on page 2. We talk the fact that the facility condition assessment, or the FCA data from 2023 studied more than 600 school facility buildings in 48 districts, and those were incorporated into the AIM system. This assessment offers forecasting models to assist in projecting potential needs and remedies, and allows the SCD to update our condition scores and perform repairs and replacements, providing a dynamic and up-to-date score for facilities. That's something new, Mr. Chairman. Past FCAs were a snapshot in time. The way this one was performed and based on how this one was done, we also just recently did this with all state buildings. It's forward-looking 20 years out. And what it does, it gives us the ability to try and forecast when things are coming up, when those changes are made. But let's just say a district puts a brand new roof on. Well, that obviously will change their score on the building. We can go in and reset that timing. If that had been 20 years old, the assessment said, hey, it's coming up in a year or two, that affects their score. If we go back in and say, reset that timing and that score, that will change that score for the better on our scoring system. And so incidentally, we've got a committee that we're working with the districts on right now. We've had 2 meetings. One of them, I think, was maybe earlier, well, last week was the latest one we had, where we're asking the districts to weigh in and help us on this scoring. A couple of things that came out of that assessment early on, and so they were using a lot of national standards within that, the consultant did, for life expectancy of components on a building. And so they said, well, they used the most conservative one that was in the standards. So life expectancy on brick on a building of 50 years. I can't think of a single, in talking with the districts, we're not redoing the brick on an outside of a building. We may be going and touching up brick and point and tuck and maybe replacing a brick or two, but we're not completely redoing that in Wyoming. And so that's a standard that we feel should probably be more like 100 years. We've got a lot of schools around the state that had been at that 80-year plus range, and we're not doing anything on the brick. So we're having the districts help us kind of analyze and see where that's at. So we've got a committee kind of working on to make this better. So when we go out future, we can again give good guidance to the consultant and keep consistency based on the help from the districts also. The school facilities division, kind of looking forward over the next few years, short-term goals, review the safety and security needs in conjunction with the 48 school districts, the WDE and Homeland Security. The state actually contracted for an assessment for safety and security about 10 years ago. We talked about that this morning. And so this fall, I'm hoping maybe in October-ish timeframe, we're going to go back out and do another security assessment of all the school buildings in the state. Again, been 10 years plus. By the time we get it done, probably about 12 years. How we secure schools has changed. There's a lot more electronics and things like that than there was 10 years ago. So I think it's something that needs to kind of be updated and see where we're at. We've spent $60-70 million based on funding that's come through, plus the major maintenance 10% set asides. The districts have spent some of their own money on security. So with that happening since 2015, again, I think it's time to get a better assessment on how we're doing statewide. We've had meetings in 2004 with SCD, WDE, and Homeland Security. We held a summit here in Cheyenne. And then in 2026, WDE, again, our office in Homeland Security hosted a resource personnel conference. Shelby and I both attended that, and I thought it was extremely good that we did. It was a kind of an eye-opener for us. A lot of good came out of that, and we hope to see that grow. There's a lot more work going on internally between the security resource officers. They kind of got a group. I wouldn't call them necessarily a commission, but a group, and a lot more work going on there. They have some new leadership, and again, a lot of things that we learned out of there for some subjects that have come up in the past that, quite frankly, I wish I'd have known about at that point in time. SCD intends to, again, go out and do a request for qualifications, again, to look at all of our K-12 schools. The second bullet point, Mr. Chairman, SCD plans to offer training sessions regarding the development of routine maintenance plan, along with the implementation and best practices for routine and preventing maintenance plans and activities. So taking care of a building is kind of a three-legged stool. You got to do your routine maintenance. If you don't do it right and at the right time, it adds to increased costs in your major maintenance. And if you don't do that, of course, then you're spending big bucks on capital construction. And House Bill 86 that we've talked about some earlier on the previous discussion today really codified that all state agencies, the schools, community college, and UW, you shall have a routine maintenance plan and you shall report on that. And so we're offering training. We've actually got the meeting set up. You're certainly welcome to attend, any members. The first meeting is going to be September 15th in Casper. We're going to have an 8-hour training course. And really the first 4 hours is going to lay out from a national perspective what should go into a routine maintenance plan. What should that look like? Why should you have a routine maintenance plan? We're expecting probably 200 folks to that, maybe more. After I think a day and a half of putting that out on the website last week, we already had like 55 people signed up to come to that. That doesn't include our office, and I've heard from a lot of groups that are going to send another 8 or 10 people from there. So a lot of interest in this. And what I'm trying to do is really, for lack of a better term, create a fraternity of facility managers. We all can use training. Let's just take Casper, for example. We've got YDOT has facility managers, A&I has facility managers, community college does, city does, county does, school district does, but we're not great at talking with each other. So when it comes to how do I find an electrical contractor in Casper or wherever it may be, I want to form a group so these people know each other so they can rely upon each other. We're going to put a blog on our website so that everybody that can sign up for that, you can send out a question to somebody and then they can come back, and the group of 200 folks or more in the state can come, well, this is who I use, or this is how I handle that situation with my elevator repair, et cetera, et cetera. So this is our first inaugural meeting, and I hope it's not our last. And from what I'm hearing for folks already, I think it'll grow in the future. The contractors associations and a lot of our vendors are excited about it. They want to see the same thing, so we can talk back and forth on this. So again, that's September 15th in Casper. We're also going to offer through this RFP and the training that's going out right now, some virtual 1 to 2 hour trainings throughout the next year. And so that might be, how do you go and inspect and how do you maintain a roof or an HVA system, a control system? Our afternoon, we're going to have 4 breakout sessions along those lines. How do you train future people all the way to roof or envelope, the outside of your building, taking care of that, et cetera, et cetera. And again, try to step up the training on routine maintenance. So that's moving forward. The next one is the facility managers. Again, I talked about right now, they're helping us with the FCA update process. We've got 2 other groups, chairman and vice chair are sitting in on this one, and that's the updates to the adequacy of design standards, and then recommendations on component projects may be helpful for the discussion we were just having right before lunch. What might look like? So we have 3 focus groups helping us in that regard with a number of folks from the districts also. And then as required by Wyoming statute 2115-114 and 2115-115, go through that 4-year review on adequacy standards. And again, I just mentioned the group that's helping us do that as we kind of move forward. Long term. So the legislature, the Joint Appropriations Committee, worked with them a couple of years ago to look at a 20-year strategic plan. Again, that was set in House Bill 86. The plan was funded last year in the legislature. We've got the RFP pretty well put together, so I hope to come out maybe this next month with an RFP to hire a consultant to help with a statewide 20-year strategic plan. So again, it's going to review major maintenance, routine maintenance, and capital construction, state funding, including the schools, We're looking at performing maintenance and routine maintenance on a prescribed schedule to avoid costly repairs. Again, this facility or fraternity of facility managers and this work, we still are, I believe, in a reactive routine maintenance and major maintenance program. I think we've turned that around in the last couple of years, particularly with help with more funding and some of those things. But I'd like to get it into the proactive atmosphere. And I think we're going to be there in a couple of years with the proper training. And what that does is help forecast to you all, the State Building Commission, the legislature as a whole, as to what projects are coming forward 5 years, 10 years down the road. How can we plan for that work? I'm of the firm belief that in Wyoming's budgetary cycle, in our bust boom cycle, that we, in the lean years, we don't do what we should be doing from a capital construction process. I think we're pretty good right now at major maintenance, but from a capital construction, so we let all this work and then we create our own inflation. We don't have the internal workforce in the state. Then in the bad years, we don't fund anything. So labor leaves. The businesses that are supported by that, they've got to start downsizing. They can't plan. So I can tell you, they just don't plan. Is this going to last for 1 year, 2 years? Do I go buy that $1 million piece of equipment? Do I upscale with more people? Do I build a bigger building? They're not doing that. And so what I'd really like to see is in the years where the state has some available funding, that we don't go out and spend $600 or $800 million in a year. Maybe we spend 3 or whatever that looks like within the state for capital construction, given the workforce and the needs that we have. And then in the bad, we put that into an account and into the difference. And in the bad years, maybe we have a $200 million program where we have nothing. And you can go back, you'll see it in the annual report where we've done this right now coming through. So we're working with the community colleges and the school districts on their CTE program. That's where folks come from that are in the building trades. So what does that look like in the future? How can we incorporate this funding model for businesses? Businesses can tell us how many folks are going to need in the workforce from Wyoming in Wyoming within these CTE programs. And if you haven't had a chance, there's some really good work going on right now with the WCC and AGC both, working with school districts and community colleges. They've been going around the state all summer, Gillette, Rock Springs, Cheyenne, working with the high schools and stuff, trying to say, here's the workforce. How can we train your workforce? As part of your program, have your students come work with us for a short period, or we'll come in and do some of the training for these courses and greedily upon themselves. That's so they can hire those people, or they'll get an interest in their company and come to work for them. So that's all kind of tied to this long-range strategic plan. And then again, we want to begin the process of the safety security standards, and we want to look at the school bus maintenance and parking facility design and guidelines and standardize those. So we'll be also doing a RFP to help us with that standardization and the guidelines on your transportation facilities. There's a lot of those starting to flag. So you'll see some of those requests in the future. And then we talked a couple of times about safety and security. And then finally, Mr. Chairman, on page 4, we lay out the supplemental budget requests, and I'll just kind of leave it at that at this point in time. That's at the end of this booklet where we'll go into that in detail. So any questions from the committee?
So, Director, I guess, thank you for all of that. I supported the Appropriations Committee on its efforts. I had some questions, but went along with it knowing that that you felt okay about it. This strategic plan, I'm trying to figure out what it's going to do for us on the school front. Because to be real honest, school facilities, we've had this down for quite a long time. I can see where this might make some changes in what we're up to or whatever, but can you tell me what's this asset plan going to do for the schools?
Well, I think on the school side, Mr. Chairman, again, if you look at the profile of how much construction do we have, so when I talked about that 600 million or whatever it may be, that's stateside funding and school side funding. So where should we be in that curve as we come across? And I don't think, you know, the select committee here on future projects coming up, but we haven't really forecast to you what we're seeing maybe 5 years, 10 years down the road for new schools. We get asked that in joint appropriations. This last year, they said, hey, you got any more big projects coming? And I said, no. And then I got to thinking after the meeting, well, was that, you know, what's your definition of big and my definition of big? When we were talking about, that's when they were funding Rock Springs and Campbell high schools at 160, 70 million. We don't have any big, but we're going to have 40 million or $30 million projects coming down the road every year in the form of elementary schools. Then the other thing that I think this will help us do is construction. When you're looking at it statewide, it doesn't matter if it's a UW project or a community college or a school or a state. If we inundate one area, Gillette, we're hearing that right now. Well, the Enzi building's coming up and we got to get ahead of the Enzi building with the bid on the high school. Because if we don't, the high school price is going to go up because Enzi already got the guy that wanted the job. So can we better forecast looking at the big picture of where we're going to spend the dollars and can we spread them around? Again, on the school side, in that silo, we've got 2 projects up in Gillette. We got a project in Rock Springs. We got 2 projects down here. We got, you know, a veterans home. We are kind of spreading stuff out, but we're still in a little bit of a silo where this 20-year plan will, I think, provide the governor and the legislature a better overall plan of what that funding looks like. And then the other thing that we're going to try and get into the 5-year plan is a rotation on doing facility condition assessments. It's happened fairly well on the school side. It's been vetted, but on the state side, the last one was in 2015. So we're 12 years in the making of getting this new one on the state side. So we're trying to provide some consistency. The definitions that were in there, again, we talked about that earlier. When I was dealing on the state side, community college had a different definition for major maintenance and routine maintenance than UW did, and everybody wasn't seeing it the same. So again, this is going to help. I think the big thing, and I've heard from the school districts that the formula through recalibration, I think, does a pretty good job, but it's pretty bulky. It's pretty, there's a lot of stuff goes into figuring that out. I can tell you on the state side, I don't think we're funding routine maintenance where it needs to be, simply because directors don't have a plan in some cases, and they've stuck their head out of the gopher hole a few times and asked for money and got their head whopped, and so they quit asking. And so we're going to look at routine maintenance and base it on level of service. So level of service, and this is for schools, it's for everything. Level of service, if you have the level of service to maintain this Capitol building or a hospital, is a totally different amount than you'd put into a parking garage or a warehouse. So what's the level of service for that type of building? We need to come in and assess that. And as a former consultant I used to work for, he used to say, and that's their specialty, is working on buildings. There's vertical, how do you maintain and keep buildings going? You can have all the money in the world, and if you don't have the right staffing, it doesn't do you any good. And if you have a big staff, but you don't have any money, that doesn't do you any good. So we want to look at that across the board. And this comes back to the schools. What should that routine maintenance really look like? And how should it be staffed? And again, that's why the legislature said, you shall have a plan and you shall report on that. And we've recently just stood up a routine maintenance module in AIM called Operate. We've got 17 of the 48 school districts that have come into that. Other state agencies are going to come into that. And we got Smoke and Deal on it because of our person that maintains that system. He's won a bunch of national awards. And so instead of $13 million that it would have cost normally, it was their asking price. We got it for 800 and some thousand. So we're being able to reduce the amount that the districts are paying with some of their other programs if they come in, but it'll be in our state system. So if you, the legislature, says, I want to report, we can get in there very quickly and look. And if you want to know how much they spend on snow removal, it'll be in our database. We won't even have to go out to the districts. Interestingly enough, 2 weeks ago, we've got a request from some firm back east, and they said it was a open records request, said, we want to know all of the buildings in the state, what's the condition of the buildings, what are they spending on routine maintenance, on and on and on. And I mean, in 15 minutes, we sent them something that had at least 1 million data points because we just downloaded the AIM stuff and sent it to them. And so I can tell you, we're not that way all the way across on routine maintenance, but we can get there with routine maintenance. Long-winded, Mr. Chairman, but.
It's a great answer, though. Thank you. Any other questions before the director moves on? Senator Dox.
Yeah, this one's probably already obvious. It's in your, this level of service you talk about, that's all part of our planning for everything that we have.
Mr. Chairman, right now it is not. But through this strategic plan, we're going to analyze that. Yes, we'll go building by building and put that together. Yes.
Thank you, Director.
Director.
Okay.
Sorry, we had a
next
little sidebar there on
Okay.
a couple of things you said, so.
Next item, Mr. Chairman, is our annual report on our budget, and I'm going to turn that over to Laura, and I didn't get a chance to introduce her earlier, so I'll let her do that.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Laura Anderson. I am the Finance and Operations Administrator for the State Construction Department.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson, for being here. Welcome.
Thank you. We're going to go through the financial section of our annual report. Some of these reports are based on our June 30th, the end of our fiscal year period. I'm just going to kind of do a brief overview in the interest of your time. If there's anything you want to get into the weeds into, let me know. Otherwise, we'll kind of briefly go through this. So we start out with our executive summary report, which is a combination of our operations, our major maintenance, and our capital construction. The thing that I'd like to draw your attention to is in column C. You'll see that since 2003, the legislature has put in over $4.95 billion into school facilities, which is quite a lot, I believe.
So, Ms. Anderson, just as a quick editorial, some people are shocked when they see that, but I try to help everyone remember that in the 80s and 90s in Wyoming, we didn't do anything on any building for any reason. And so what happened was in the 2000s, we inherited a situation where all these buildings, including this one, by the way, which was sitting down on dirt by the time we got to it. We barely saved it, but all the way across the board, we had a lot of catch-up work to do. And we've done that. I'm looking at Senator Dockstader and Senator Roth. We've been here for a while, and that's what we've been up to. And really proud of the fact that Wyoming figured out that we've got to get busy and get these buildings up to snuff. And so that's the background. And thank you for letting me do that. Please proceed.
Yes, sir. Moving along to page 9, this is where we take a look at our transfers. Basically, what we're looking there is making sure the money's flowing. We're taking a look at what we have budgeted, and then every month the commission looks at what's gotten awarded so that we can make sure that flow of money is going out, and the money that's coming to us is then being flowed out to take care of projects. Moving along to pages 10 through 12, this shows the balance of all of the unanticipated counts that's under the purview of the School Facilities Commission and all the details of what projects they've authorized. Just for the committee's edification, so unanticipated amounts are appropriated each biennium, but they can only be used on projects that are appropriated during that same biennium. So we leave those open, like the first one you'll see is for 17-18. That's because we've got still a couple of projects that could tap into those funds if it were necessary. When there are no more projects that can tap into those funds, they are reverted back into the school foundation program account. That takes us down to the next page I'll take you to is page 16. Pages 16 through 31 might be of interest for you. We produce this every month for LSO and our financials. This is a detailed listing of appropriation and expenditures by district and by facility as of June 30th of this year.
By the way, Ms. Anderson, just, and you know this better than anyone with the work you do, we have been fortunate in the 2000s to have the revenue. And those previous 2 decades that I referenced, it wasn't anything to do with not wanting to do something. It was a very difficult time. And so I just wanted to make sure and throw that out as well. So
Yes, sir. You might also mention that the state inherited a lot of buildings that previously had been under the purview of the district. So that all came into play as well.
yeah, very well put. Thank you. Yeah, please proceed.
Moving along with some of our annual report requirements, moving along to page 32. This is a schedule of the major maintenance report, which by commission rule, the districts are required to report all of their major maintenance expenditures by July 30th of each year. You'll notice that this report is not completely filled out. That's because when we do this annual report, we're usually doing it in June and the first part of July, and the districts have until the 31st. You should have in your handout a completed copy that is filled out of all the districts and all of their major maintenance expenditures. Moving on to page 33, we have 2 other requirements here. We have to report on any B11s. B11 is a mechanism that's used to move money in between like divisions or something that's unappropriated so that you understand how that money is moving. It's signed by the governor. Generally speaking, in our agency, it is most commonly used by schools to move money between project phases from like design to construction phase. We did not have any this year, but that's what that section is intended for. Then we also have a section where we report on any emergency facility needs that the commission authorized. We had 2 this last year. Both were in Weston counties. The first was in Weston 1 for the use of emergency funds to purchase a long lead time chiller to replace failing chiller at Newcastle High School for $214,000. And in Weston 7, the use of emergency funds to repair the elevator at the Upton High School for $226,000. So for a total of $441,000 roughly. Moving along to the next page, we also report on closed, demolished, or disposed buildings. You'll see on the information there that we had 7 schools that were demolished and 12 facilities that were disposed of. Then moving along, we also look at the more positive side, which is school openings. That we only had 1 school opening this year, and that was Little Powder up in Campbell County. That was more of a rural school. And then we had no additions that were opened during that time period.
By the way, committee, really appreciate the department going through this fairly quickly because there's a lot to cover, but that doesn't mean you can't jump in at any time. Please get my attention or just jump on the microphone. Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Keep going. Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to turn that over to Shelby now.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Shelby Carlson, School Facilities Division Administrator. I'm going to start on page 36, and we're going to take a look at what our enrollment is doing across the state. So I've got a few different ways to depict it to you. Page 36 is looking at our brick and mortar students. So we're looking at those students that are on site. It does exclude charter schools with the exception of Fremont 38 and Arapahoe because that's the only 912 school facility that they have. So they are included. Again, you'll see that we've taken another pretty deep dive this year. We lost 2,697 students statewide based on the October 1 enrollment from 2025. You know, we've said this before, but this isn't just a Wyoming thing. It's happening nationwide. I read an article recently where they say the birth rates have fallen 23% since 2007 on a nationwide basis. So people just having less children.
Real quickly, on page 36, are we, I don't know how to ask this. It's kind of, are we comparing apples with apples here or apples earlier with oranges now based on the charter school students and other students going in a virtual direction? Those numbers, you know, back in 16, 17, 18, we didn't have the alternative educational opportunity that we do now. Isn't that correct? And how does that compare with the 82,000 students now?
Yeah, Mr.
Does
Chairman.
that make sense?
Yeah, good question. So we did have some virtual programs by 2016, which is far back as we look here. And I would say that, charter schools have been coming on since that point in time too. So we've taken the data, excluded those charters statewide. So if there were 10 charters in 2016, we've taken them out. If there were, 175, we've taken them out across the board. Now, are those numbers shifting because of that? Absolutely. Virtual students are included in this.
So chances are there are more than 82,000 students in Wyoming, but there's only 82,000 of them that are in the brick and mortar schools.
That is correct. And we'll talk about that a little further as I go through these. I'll have some charts that include the charter schools. And last year, we put some information together for this committee regarding homeschool students. Last year will be the last year we were able to provide that information because that data is no longer available to WDE. So we won't be able to track those homeschool students, and we can't track private school students either.
Okay, thank you.
I did just take a look through. If we look back to 2019, which was our high point, 2025, we've lost 9,590 students across the state. Your next depiction, you should have a new handout for this. It's just basically giving you that same data with all the data points that we're using to make those projections in a large graph. And you can pretty well see that everything is declining across the board there. Page 38, this is looking at every district. So on a district-wide basis, what is that district population doing in each district? If you look across the bottom there, you'll see where we had our COVID year, we dropped about 7%, as we would all expect. But then bricks and mortar, we went up by about 3.4. Ever since then, we have been dropping. And since last year, we've dropped about 3.16% in the number of students that are in our brick and mortar buildings. The next sheet just gives you a depiction of really what's happened since COVID. That's a green and red sheet. We've been watching this every year. If we look back to 2023, we actually had 15 districts that were at or above their pre-COVID numbers. 24, we were at 12 districts that were at or above. Last year, we were 9 districts that were at or above. And this year, you'll see we are 3 districts that are above. I think as we look at these, you can look at Fremont number 2. They've gone up steadily ever since then. My suspicion is that's that military museum. Mr. Starks has come in, has built his own employee housing and some of those sort of things and bringing people into that community. The other 2 are both virtual programs. And the rest of the districts are dropping. And then, of course, you see charter schools at the top. They have been continuing to just grow. Okay, I'm moving on to page 40. This is broke out. It just gives you a different way to look at this data. And it's broke out by regions across the state. So you can go find your region. I think as you go through here, you'll see that in general, most of the districts are declining. You can just see it in a bar graph. This goes from page 40 to 45. So unless there's specific questions in that range, I will just move to 45 and you can go back and look at, how things are changing regionally across the state. So on page 45, this just shows you the enrollment projections for the charter schools only. So we've limited this to nothing but charter schools. And you can see after 2022, that's when the charter schools really started to take off. You can see that the rate of change is slowing just a little bit. I don't know that that will last. We've got new charter schools coming in and applying. We do have another charter school that just opened this year in Alpine. Next year, they're anticipating for Riverton charter school to open. So we lost 2697 students statewide. Charters grew by 175. So you can see there's still quite a disparity. We lost 2,522 kids at least out of our system that we track. Again, could be going to homeschool, could be going to private. Page 46 and 47 just gives you that same data either in a graph or a table so that you can take a look at that and see how those numbers are changing. We move to page 48. Again, now we're looking at a statewide brick and mortar enrollment, and we are including our charter schools in here. So this would be all charter schools across the state. Again, you'll see this decline. It's just softened a little bit by that 175. We take a look at this between 19 and 2025. We've dropped about 8,800 students across the state. I would say, you know, the rate of growth of our charters is slowing a little bit, but we still see that pretty steady drop. We actually lost over double the number of students this year over what we lost last year. So a big drop this year. Again, you will see that same enrollment graph that we indicate along with the table by district. And then on page 51, this just depicts the enrollment of those districts that have charter schools in them. I didn't repeat any of the other data. So it's just those. You'll see, you know, Fremont 38, Platte number 1. They both had pretty decent drops this year, right there in that 35 student range, but overall staying a little more stable than it looks like our bigger districts are. And with that, I would take any questions on enrollments.
Questions, committee. Madam Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question on enrollment, and maybe we don't have this information, would this be anticipated kindergartners coming in to register, or are these like already enrolled kids that are students that are dropping out or going where we can't track them? So let's say we have kids that are sophomores or, you know, freshmen, and then the next year we're seeing a deep decline in that number. I would be curious if we know that, or is it incoming projected kindergartners? That's what I would like to know.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Vice Chair, we do take a look at kind of what the average enrollment is doing coming in every year. And then we use the cohort methodology. So we take the growth as those students move through the system. We do that. Kindergarten's the tough one, right? What I can say, we look at what's coming in every year and we average that and put that into the system. We have, on a number of our Mercer studies, we have been looking at enrollment methodologies in a number of different ways, like 5, 6 different ways. And so you can look at a lot of different things for kindergartens. You can go look at birth rates. What you'll find when you look at birth rates is they're dropping down. And that's what we're seeing in the numbers as we bring those in, looking at from one year to the next. We use a number of different methodologies. In general, everything shows us dropping, but some of them will soften the rate of decline. And so in most of our Mercer studies, we have been using an average of those different methodologies and then projecting the size of a facility or an addition based on that average value, as opposed to just looking at our cohort value. Does that answer your question?
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Bratton, I think you had one first, and then we'll come back to Senator Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also have a question. If the numbers are included in your 9 to 12 numbers, I'm looking on page 49, but there were some other pages as well. Does that include the drop would be also the number of students who have graduated early? And that's especially as is split out by school districts.
I mean, if they have graduated early, they're going to disappear from the system. So we won't get that count come enrollment on October 1. So those students will not show. So some of those could be early graduations when you get to that point. I think here, when you look at this, if we go back to kindergarten or any of these, if you look at these colored lines across here, red being kindergarten, you can see from 2016 to 2025, we've dropped 75.39 to 59.49. If we look at K-12, again, you'll see that 92.385 dropping down to 84.077. That's our 10 years of trailing data. So it just shows they're dropping. Could be early graduation. Absolutely.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
I just do know that includes some districts that there are, especially with some of the community college programs, that could be a significant number, but thank you.
Yes.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I was just gonna echo what we heard a moment ago, which is that the birth rate has also been dropping. So independent of other things, independent of leaving schools, of what we're seeing with statewide charter schools, of homeschooling, we're around 2,000 births per year fewer than we were a decade ago. And you compound that over several years, and that just about makes up for the shortcoming that we're seeing right now. So it doesn't take much more explanation, and not people coming, people going. Really, a lot of it is explained by fewer births equals fewer kindergartners. And that's the reality. But it turns out that's true. Yeah.
So just to add to what the senator just said, I think it was last year, somebody who knows was telling me that was the smallest kindergarten class in Natrona County in 62 years. So that is the global warming thing. The equivalent on school facilities is an enrollment that's gone down that far. And that begins to, the hard part is for this committee going forward is going to be that will prompt some difficult conversations. And it's just going to. So anyway, appreciate all your numbers and good report.
Mr. Chairman, just us out working with the districts right now, there's a couple of places where the districts have kind of a hard choice. They're really sitting here looking at, I am down enough students, I could close a school and move students into that same school. And that's really kind of hard decision for the community. And I know the districts are struggling with it.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking the bigger ones like Cheyenne or Casper where they've been doing something. I'm talking a district that has 3 buildings and now maybe they're going to have to go down to 2 buildings or something. So you're going to see more of that. And, we've just started talking about some of the districts right now at that 30% capacity and what should that minimum be. We had that conversation this morning. And as it goes out in the future, just looking at that data, the way it's going to continue is going to be, next couple of years is going to be something that this committee is going to have to wrestle with.
Yeah, I agree, Director. And nobody likes to even think in those directions, but it's very, very difficult out across.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just one more thing I might add on kindergarten and looking at birth rates in Wyoming. We have run into some issues with that. Like if you look at Fremont County, you can't have a baby in Fremont County. So they're born in Hot Springs County, they're born in Natrona County. Same with Converse County. We're working with Converse One right now. Can't have babies there. They're born in Natrona or they go somewhere else. So tracking birth rates in Wyoming can be a challenge to use that birth rate methodology just because of our lack of our OB services across state.
Yeah, it's no question. Ms. Carlson, I think that's a mitigating factor for sure. There's a lot of things coming into play there, but I think healthcare is going to be one of the top 5 going forward for Wyoming in a frontier state, and getting enough healthcare professionals and recruiting and keeping and tough deal. Any other questions on enrollment numbers or anything? Senator Rothfuss?
Just a quick point. I think, so for statewide, Vital Statistics uses place of residence, not place of birth. So the statewide aggregate should be correct, but the place of birth, like county level data might be skewed. Is that consistent with your understanding? It seems like we're not as bad off because I would expect to obviously have folks in the south of the state, folks in Laramie. A lot of them do deliver down in Fort Collins. A lot of them are at Ivinson, but there's a shift there. But I believe Vital Statistics is using residents as opposed to hospital of birth. Is that consistent with your
They
thought?
do do that. It just takes us a little more digging. It's not as easy to pull that
Okay.
information out. So.
Great. Thank
Yeah,
you.
sounds good.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Senator Office is actually the one that kind of queued this up about 2 years ago at looking at how we're measuring those trends when we're looking at capacity for buildings and stuff. So again, we're not just fixated on the cohort studies. We're looking at 4 or 5 different other mechanisms. And to the point, we had one district where we were trying to figure out what their population trends were. We had we agreed to disagree on what that was going to be. They thought it was going to be a lot higher, but we actually got down to where we were geotagging every one of their students. And so we could tell where they were at. They looked at, okay, are they in a single family? Are they in or not a single family, single room, or a room with 3 bedrooms, those sort of things? Where are the kids coming from as a group, and trying to make those projections ahead of time. So I think we've got some pretty sophisticated mechanisms now. Some of that's just because we have computers where you couldn't.
So when you
do
say
that
you
in the
tagged
past.
them, you're talking technology and not those things.
Yeah.
you put it- Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you saw them wandering around with the big 214 air tag, no, that wasn't us. That was something.
I just had to lighten it up a little, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Carlson, for that. Please proceed, Director.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to start on page 52. We're going to talk about our annually required capacity and condition schedules. Director talked about this a little right at the beginning, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. Again, we are required to measure condition. We still are using that 2023 facility condition assessment. As the director mentioned, we do adjust those. So if we have had a component project fixed, we're going to remove that component from their deficiencies and the value that was associated to that component in that assessment. The other thing we've done is, like, if we know we're getting a new high school, let's take Rock Springs, we have removed all the deficiencies associated with that building because we know we're replacing those. It's going to be brand new. That has come out of the data. So that's how we're making those adjustments. We do have the facility managers working group that is helping us here, that FCA, or Facility Condition Assessment Group, in that how do we look at if they come in and do a major maintenance project, but they only say address half of the facility. How should that adjustment be made in the system? Right now, we're not adjusting for that at all. We want that group to help us work through, how do we make that adjustment for a partial fix on a system? We know it improved the value of the building, right? Or improved our score, but how do you assess that? So we're working on that as we speak.
Ms. Carlson, that, by the way, that's a real high five for getting that group stood back up. We kind of allowed that to dissipate there for a while, and they're so valuable. And as a group, I think they're good consultants for you guys. So just wanted to send a little shout out to those that are participating on that front.
Yeah.
Means a lot.
Yeah.
So
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Absolutely. They know their buildings better than anybody. And so then, according to our rules and regulations, identification of a school facility to undergo a most cost-effective remedy, if they hit 0.3, meaning there's 30% of the value of that building has deficiencies, then we're going to trigger a most cost-effective remedy study. Again, we're looking at 5 years. That allows us the time to get in to study what's actually happening in that building and determine how we're going to resolve that deficiency and bring that score back up to a reasonable level for the foreseeable future. A lot of ours will go out 10 years. Some, by the time you take care of those big components, they may go out almost 20 years before we're going to see that 0.3 hit again. So I'm going to move on to capacity unless there's any questions about conditions specifically. Okay, capacity is our second remediation schedule. The commission does have a capacity methodology, and we calculate the capacity percentages annually. We're looking out 8 years into the future. Again, we're looking at space usage, looking at room size, we're looking at grade configuration, and we're also using utilization rate when we do that. And so we review this every year based on the October enrollment data. So that's how we look at our capacity methodology. Right now, we still have 6 ongoing Mercer studies that were in the original 24 that we started, and we have added 1 new Mercer to that bunch. So we have 7 active Mercers going today. And we have actually going before a board of trustees tonight on one of those Mercers. So with that, we're still tracking the 95 million. We gave you an update on that in May. We continue to watch that and use it as appropriate. And then I'm not going to touch on the budget, as we'll be talking about that here a little later. So if there's no questions on that, kind of overall what those 2 remediation schedules look like, I will pass it off to Mr. Rexis to talk about our condition indexes.
Thank you, Shelby. Mr. Chairman, starting on page 53, what we've done is we've listed the top 23 FCI scores for the state. And in being the top, that means that these are the 23 buildings across the state that are in the worst condition, that are hitting highest on our radar. You can see we've got a hard line drawn right there after number 12. That is the threshold that drives a Mercer study, anything over a 0.3. FCI scores are the existing deficiencies and any projected needs that came out of our assessment looking ahead 5 years divided by the replacement cost value of the building. You can see, like I said, we've got 12 of them that are above the line, and the rest of those are steadily approaching that threshold, which may warrant a Mercer study in the immediate future.
So, Mr. Rexis, just a quick question. I couldn't help but notice in my neck of the woods, Little Red Creek popped up on there again. I'm not disparaging anybody or anything, but it's been on there 2 or 3 times in the last 10, 15 years, it feels like. So what is the situation out there? What?
Mr. Chairman, I'm almost tempted to say a temporary facility gets a temporary remedy, but our modular facilities really have a life expectancy of about 15 to 20 years.
Really?
We have some out there that are older than that we've given attention to, but it just really depends on what the deficiencies are. You know, for instance, we had one last year that was flagging quite a bit. It actually surpassed that threshold, and it was over in Niobrara County. When we got to looking at it, it was actually on leased land, and there was a leased building that the state did not own that was included in some of that assessment data because the district was using it for educational purposes. They had leased it from the owner, but we don't go in and we don't make repairs to those types of facilities because we don't own them. But a lot of the other deficiencies were expressly related to the conditions of the site. Again, we didn't necessarily own that site. So when these pop up, we have to take a look and make considerations on what the anticipated future need is going to be for those facilities, what the deficiencies are, what the best remedy is, and frankly, in a lot of cases, you know, we just don't know how long those modulars are going to be in use. A
Yeah,
lot of things
gotcha.
shift in the
Okay,
rural community.
thank you. I was just surprised to see it on there again, but I guess that just speaks to how long I've been here. So.
That come true.
You'll notice in the final column and on the comprehensive list as well, we've indicated which buildings are either in the process of a Mercer study or have completed a Mercer study as well. And in some instances, as Administrator Carlson alluded to earlier, those deficiencies have been deactivated if we realize the funding. But we do have projects out there where the Mercer is completed, where we're anticipating requesting funds for that. And until those funds are realized, we do not deactivate those deficiencies. We are tracking all those deactivations so that in the future, when we have another facility assessment, that's additional data that we can hand off to that consultant to let them know what work has been completed and what's been done so they can validate and verify that information. On pages 53 through 60, you will see a comprehensive list of all the educational facilities. And I got to give credit to Division Administrator Carlson on this. Several times over the past year, it's been a huge effort to go through and try to find one particular building on this list. I can't tell you how many times I've read through the whole list and not found the building I was looking for and then had to go back. So this year we decided to categorize them by district and sort them within the district based on the highest needs first. So that should help you find any schools that you need to look for. And it does have the ranking over in the left-hand column. We did very similar things for the non-educational buildings, and you'll find that on pages 61 through 66, but basically has the same information and the same rankings of those buildings.
Go ahead, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Looking specifically at the Laramie 1, how come there are so many completed Mercer studies with low ratings?
Mr. Chairman, at the time, we had several schools that were flagging for a Mercer study that had exceeded that threshold. And I think the number was about 7, whether it was capacity or condition. Because it affected and was affected by other schools that are within the district, we did a comprehensive Mercer study to kind of outline the district's needs, not just for those 7 schools, but we took a look at the whole district and all the different schools within that district. And then I guess to address the second part of that question, we used a lot of that 95 million to fund some of the remedies for this. And we also had some other appropriations for some of these schools. So there's been quite a few deficiencies that have been deactivated, even though we're just basically in the initial phase of getting things moving. We got 2 schools now that just started construction. We got several other projects that we have funding for, and we deactivated those deficiencies accordingly. And then we've also got a comprehensive plan for this district on how we're going to approach their future needs and future deficiencies too, so that we've got that scheduled out, not to pile on to this district and create so much work that it's just not feasible for them to do in the immediate future, but we scheduled it out over a course of time.
Did you get that? I hope so, because I
want to say
I'm riding a little slower horse here, but I think everybody's on board with that plan, aren't they?
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. We haven't gotten too much pushback since the initial Mercer came out.
I know you're working on it. Well, good. Laramie 1. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Okay, keep going, Mr. Rex.
With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Division Administrator Carlson to present the capacity needs list.
Okay, take it away, Ms. Carlson.
Mr. Chairman, starting on 67, Again, we get that October 1 enrollment. That data is critical to us. We use it in two different ways. We calculate the capacity of each school building, and we use that data to populate the enrollment projections that you just looked at. When we do capacity, we look at a space by space evaluation of each classroom. We know the size of each classroom, number of kids, how it's being programmed. Does it have kindergartners in it? Does it have fifth graders in it? We use all that data to help us determine the capacity of the school. We'll roll that up into a building capacity and then buildings into campuses. That will be where we have more than one building that serves, like the 912 facility. We'll roll it into that campus. We do look at breaking rural out in many places. Like if you've got K-6, they're not going to bus those kids all the way to town. So we'll break those rural students out, keep them at that rural school rather than looking at them district-wide. And then there are a couple statutes and state or commission rules and regulations that we've referenced there on how we do our capacity and square footage requirements and our building needs schedule. I'll move on to page 69. This is capacity by district report. So this is district-wide. This is not on a building by building. This is overall in the district. You'll see our highest capacity there is Laramie County School District number 1 here in Cheyenne at 89%. And they've got about 1,520 extra seats within that district. And then we drop down from there, and you'll see if we get clear down here to the bottom, Park County School District number 16, that is Meeteetse. They're sitting at 24.5% capacity. They have 90 students. Their building adjusted capacity will hold 367. So I think this indicates why the 115 and to 135% is so critical, because we can see those students or those school districts there that are, really low in capacity. Probably almost half of them are 50%, 60% or lower.
Ms. Carlson, what is sublet 9?
Sublet 9 is Big Piney.
Okay, thought so. Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to page 70. So this is our prioritized list looking out 8 years. I looked at this, I cut it at 85% just to show those buildings. So this is on a building by building basis. Those buildings in the state that are at 85% or above. If you look at those ones where projected capacity greater than 100%, we have 4 schools shown there. All 4 of those have been addressed by Mercer studies that are complete. As we get into the budget request, you'll see a request for some renovation to Jackson Elementary School to change it to the Frontier Academy Alternative School in Fremont 25, which is our top scoring school. They're projected at 155% in 2034, currently sitting at about 172%. So you will see that coming in this budget request to do some alterations to that school. Then our next section is kind of that medium capacity need. So we're looking at 100% down to 90%. We got 8 schools in there. Again, you'll see a couple of those that have Mercer's complete. And almost all of them, you'll see a few there. Burns Elementary School is growing, but most of them are dropping. So they may be over 100% today, but as we look out with our declining enrollment projections, they'll be under 100% in 8 years. I wanted to point out Pine Bluffs Elementary School. We do have an ongoing Mercer going right there now. That is a school that's growing. Don't know if it's because it's near the border or what's going on. Overall, that district is declining, but that particular school is growing. So we are looking and doing a Mercer right there, likely going to come out that they need an addition to that Pine Bluffs Elementary School.
Ms. Carlson, that's a pretty new school, isn't it?
It is pretty new.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So I would hope that we were smart enough at the time to build it so that we can maybe build onto that school, or?
That's
Mr.
correct.
Yeah, they did.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Just wanted to make sure.
So again, and I thought I might key in on that 8 years. So by statute, we have to project capacity 5 years after the completion of the remedy. So 8 years allows us 3 years to design, construct, and then that 5-year projection from the day we anticipate it will open. So that's why we use 8 years for our design capacity. If we moved pages 71 through 78, again, we have taken this and broke it apart by district and put it alphabetic so that it just makes it easier to find a particular school if you're looking for it, as those last charts were hard to track. One of the things that we do look at when we're doing a Mercer study is the efficiency of the use of those buildings. And kind of our threshold is at 70%. If they're less than 70%, pretty inefficient use of that building. We would call that an inefficient building because that capacity calculation has just gotten too low. So I think if you kind of use that as your guide as you go down through here, you'll see a lot of these schools that are at that level. I thought I would sit here. I was just going to look at Natrona and see what Red Creek is doing. I don't think it's got very many students, and I'm not even with it alphabetic, I'm not picking it up there. So anyway, this one is just by school. Across the state, you can go and look at your particular district and look at a particular school. And with that, I would take any questions.
So, Ms. Carlson, I do have one, or maybe just a thought for all of us to think about. We do capacity building by building, but we just got information that almost every district is down pretty dramatically in enrollment. Is that going to necessitate a look at that whole process of capacity and the way we evaluate it?
Mr. Chairman, that's an excellent question, and certainly one that we're wrestling with. We have taken a look at some of these Mercers. Does it make sense to consolidate into a different, into one school in some of these districts? Where do you hit that threshold where we maybe ought to be looking at, is there something we can do to directly go in and reduce square footage for that district? Because they're struggling. They want to keep up with those schools and keep them nice too, and they just physically can't with the amount of money they get. Those are all kind of policy questions and ones we're struggling with too. It's an excellent question. And I'll tell you, for at least me, we talked about Cali Elementary School and opening that capacity. We don't want to do that, certainly. So when we're looking at a Mercer, we're looking at a new facility or an addition, we're saying, okay, what were we at the highest level in the last 5 years? And we're going to build that school that's 90%. Well, when we made that decision was 3 years ago, and we'd kind of had like 1 year of decline. But if we're now at 4 years of decline, I'm getting very uncomfortable with that methodology. But at the same time, you don't want to keep projecting this 20-year downtrend and use that. And then something happens and you just did a Cali. We built it too small. And so that's something that we're struggling with, wrestling with. I think in the end, it's going to be kind of a policy call on where we want to start setting those numbers, because I'm getting uncomfortable.
Well, it has not been so much to this point, but I think just to underscore the reason we all need to be thinking about this is when we go out on the floor of the House or the Senate with all this information and we show that we've had a reduction from 90-some thousand students down to 80-some thousand. And then we turn around and our budget request includes schools for capacity. We just need to know what we're talking about. And be able to defend that. Because in some cases, it might be a capacity issue in a district that's actually down in students. So I just wanted to throw that out there because that's where we are, committee. But
Yeah.
not to belabor.
Yeah,
So,
well, Mr. Chairman, that's a good point. I think what we have in our back pockets is we're doing a Mercer study for every one of those remedies that we're recommending. So we have that justification available to us to support those decisions. So I think the Mercer process helps the legislature, helps us make recommendations to our commission to you, and you to the
yeah, I think
your
there's
constituent
a
and your
cost, you know, and on our staff as well, but I think it's worth the investment to make sure we've got that backing on all of this. So appreciate it. Ms. Carlson, thank you. Please proceed if you're not
Mr. Chairman,
finished up, or
just a quick follow-up.
go
on
ahead,
that.
Senator Dockstader.
On Ms. Carlson, on the Mercer studies, what's our time frame on that for these? I'm looking at this, and most all the schools I'm just glancing at, short notice, they show the capacity, the percentage, even we're losing students, we're going to have some vacant buildings out to 34. So when do these Mercer studies come about and we have something to work with?
Mr. Chairman, we will, I'm getting ready to go back out on the street with another request for proposals. When we went out the initial time in 2022, we got 4 consultants. We contracted all 4 of them. What we found through these last 2 years is they can be working 1 pretty diligently, 2 stretches of consultants. Every Mercer study takes anywhere from 6 months. One of them took us 18 months. So it depends on a lot of times just what that district wants, what they're seeing, those types of things. So we'll be kicking loose on some of these new ones, I would say next year. Hope to go out here within the next month or 2 for a request for proposals, have them under contract probably the beginning of the year, and start putting those out. Yeah, thank you. And Mr. Chairman.
Senator Love's got a
Oh.
question. Go ahead, Senator.
Just curious, Arp Elementary School, my mother-in-law retired from there, and I see that they're at 155% of capacity. And I know the school was condemned about 2 years ago. Is that of the Cary Junior High they currently occupy, or is that the old Cary Junior High that they've been occupying? Or is it the old Arp Elementary?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that is based on the old ARP elementary facility.
Okay, we're making progress to getting that done.
Boy, they've broken ground and dirt's flying out there, so that's good.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You bet. Thanks, Senator.
Mr. Chairman, to your question earlier, Red Creek is currently closed and has been for a couple of years. So
It is closed and has been for a couple of years.
yes.
That's more in line with my way of thinking, but I wasn't going to say it. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. So, please proceed. We want to march on through, the budget.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to pass it off to Mr. Rexis to talk about project cost budgeting on page 79.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to be moving through this next section pretty quickly. I do have a short version of project cost budgeting and a much shorter version of project cost budgeting. What's your pleasure, sir? I know we're in a hurry to get to the budget and talk about the meat and potatoes here today.
I think your short version is fine. I think we've got good committee members who can dig down if we need to or want to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
On page 79 of 94, we basically outline the process for our project cost budgeting. At a high level, our capital budgeting process answers 3 questions. How much facility is needed? What should it reasonably cost? And when will that cost be incurred? We first establish allowable square footage based primarily on enrollment and state standards. We then apply an appropriate construction cost using Wyoming project history, regional data, professional estimates, and project-specific conditions. Because these budgets are often developed years before construction, we escalate these costs to the anticipated construction date. And finally, we add the necessary costs outside of the construction contract, such as design, testing, inspections, equipment and contingencies or any unique site or project costs. The result is intended to be a reasonable planning level estimate of the total funding necessary to deliver the project, recognizing that actual market conditions will not be known until the project is ultimately bid. The square foot cost is just the starting point, not the entire project budget. Several of the costs, such as demolition, asbestos, infrastructure, land, and unusual site conditions, can be significant but cannot responsibly be captured simply by you increasing a generic square foot number. So we have to take a look at those individually and then add them in. But essentially, there's a lot of steps to that process that we do. On pages 82 and 83, we have a appropriation sequence and an appropriation flow chart. These graphics illustrate the overall process for developing and appropriating school facilities funding. It begins with identifying and prioritizing facility needs and then moves through several levels of review by the School Facility Commission, this select committee, the governor, the Joint Appropriations Committee, and ultimately the legislature. The key point is the projects are progressively evaluated and refined before the legislature makes the final funding decision. I may need to get my glasses for the eye test that's on page 84. But essentially, this is a sample budget worksheet that we use to build all of our projects on when we're budgeting at an appropriation or early planning stage. It shows how an individual project budget is assembled. There's multiple lines on here. You can see we've got one portion that's in the upper third of the page that's blue. That's our planning. A lot of that planning, as Division Administrator Carlson alluded to earlier, is completed through the Mercer study. Following that, we've got the design phase for the project that captures a lot of our soft costs and some of our design contingencies. And then finally, we've got our construction cost outlined in green. That talks about a lot of the additional costs there, such as plan reviews, permitting, contingencies, or any special considerations. And a little later, we're going to get into our deployment schedule, and you're going to see that there are projects that are appropriated by phase, and there are projects that are appropriated with all phases come together. So on that deployment schedule, we've got them listed out as they were appropriated. So you may see the same project on there 3 different times if there's a separate appropriation for design, a separate appropriation for construction, and demolition as well. We also have projects where all 3 are just rolled together. Moving on, I believe page 85. The next 3 pages are graphicals that give us historical information we use to understand the market, how costs are changing over time, how much individual projects vary, and how closely bid costs ultimately track with the final construction costs. Kind of gives us an idea how well the drawings were done, how well the project was administered, and how many change orders were incorporated into the contract by the end of the project. On page 85 is the long-term cost trend, and it shows the overall trend in Wyoming school construction costs. While costs fluctuate from year to year, the long-term direction is clear, and they've increased substantially, particularly since 2020. On page 86, it's kind of a scatter chart here. It shows the number of projects that are input into the data set in order to drive the graphic. And this shows a variation between the different projects with a poly trend line that shows the average as it moves through the course of time. It demonstrates that even within the same year, project costs can vary significantly. That reinforces why historical averages are useful for budgeting, but project-specific conditions also have to be considered. And finally, on page 87, is a bar graph that shows the difference between our initial bid cost versus our actual cost at completion. And as you can see in there, most cases it goes up slightly. I think we've had a few projects that actually came in on the opposite side of that, where there were things negotiated during the course of the project and the cost of the total contract actually went down. But we don't see that happen very often. It does occasionally. Moving, any questions for this section, Mr. Chairman?
Any questions, committee? I'm sitting here wondering what new tariffs might do to that graph. It looks awfully good at this point, but you hope we don't turn around and go back the other way. So,
Mr. Chairman, it's been a challenging 3 years. I mean,
yeah,
things are moving. Sometimes one commodity can be high and another low. And 6 to 12 months later, it does a complete flip flop. And so it's difficult to track. And there are a lot of different components and systems and qualities too in there. So we try to do whatever we can to make the budgets work.
my guys up in my neck of the woods think that the Canada piece will have an impact if we don't get that resolved. A lot of product comes out of there. So it'll be interesting. So. Anything, committee? Okay, please proceed. We got to get on through this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The last thing that I'll be presenting in this portion of the report is the deployment schedule. And again, we have another eye test. This is essentially a rough estimate of how our projects are going to roll out and what anticipated expenditures we expect in those quarters based on the schedule that's set forward. The final graph shows how previously appropriated project funds are anticipated to be deployed over time. Once funding is appropriated, it is not spent immediately. Expenditures occur as individual projects progress through land acquisition, planning, design, and construction. The schedule projects those expenditures by quarter based on the anticipated progress of each project. And I'd like to mention that because individual districts establish the pace and approach for their projects, the department works with them to manage that progression, and it updates the anticipated deployment annually. So you might see differences from one year to the next, depending on how those schedules change and develop. Just a few things about the chart. You'll notice that it's color coded with our land being in brown, our design is in yellow, our planning is in blue, and our construction is in green. I mean, this is a fairly fundamental graphic. We all know that, number one, we're talking about quarters here. So there's a 3-month period. There's always going to be design expenditures, even during the course of construction, for the construction administration that occurs. But we try to keep it as separate as we can and depict these schedules as accurately as we believe they will roll out. There are many projects that only have dollar values within that first quarter of fiscal year 27. There's a good possibility that a majority of those funds are going to be returned. We just haven't closed those projects out yet, so we don't know what expenses may be hitting, but we've got a pretty good idea. You'll see at the bottom of the page, there is some funds that we believe are going to be reverted as soon as we get final confirmation from the district that all of their pay applications have been submitted and paid out. And then we do have several projects you'll notice in a block of orange towards the bottom. Those are projects that actually had funding attached to them prior to the Mercer study being initiated or completed. So we don't necessarily want to create a sense of entitlement here. I've rolled those up into $1 value because per statute and per the session law, the Mercer study actually depicts what the budget is going to be on those projects. So I've rolled that up into one final number and then estimated what that deployment looks like just based off of the best information available to me. With that, I'm open for any questions.
Questions, committee? Okay, well done.
And Mr. Chairman, lastly, there is a bar chart that's just a little bit of a different graphic that shows what our anticipated expenditures are going to be by quarter for all these projects.
Thank you, Mr. X.
Thank
Well
you.
done. Appreciate that. Who's next?
Mr. Chairman, budget, and I'll take that.
Director? It's all yours, by golly.
Okay.
Bring it down the home stretch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as you mentioned earlier, we're required by statute to submit a budget every year to this commission and to the governor's office and or this committee. And so the state construction department, again, we prepared the upcoming proposal for 27-28 supplemental budget request. And again, that's using the 2023 facility condition assessment, our facility plans, and accordingly to our rules and regulations. The budget recommendations for 2027-28 are prioritized. And please note that we've got some asterisks on projects that we would like the funding available immediately, and we'll get into a little detail on those. First item up is major maintenance. And this year, we're not requesting any funding for major maintenance. There's still, the gray area. We got to take into account what the ADM is in October and those sort of things. But right now, our figures are showing that we've got about $7,551 left in last year's appropriation to cover this upcoming request. So couple of things there. If there's money left in the biennium based on the formula that goes out to the districts, that will get reverted next year. So if we don't spend that 7,500, it'll go back in. If for some reason, for example, we see a trend and increase all of a sudden in ADM, which is going to drive a higher major maintenance cost, even though we're projecting at this point in time we don't need money. You may recall last year we asked there was an additional 1.06 million or something like that. So we'll make that up in the next budget request. Again, this is kind of an estimate, but right now we think we're good to go and we're not requesting any additional major maintenance funds. Priority number one, again, we're responsible to give a priority listing. So our number one priority is our component level major maintenance projects. Our total ask there is $28,386,780. We list, and these are in priority order, the first 11 projects that make up that total dollar amount. In addition to that, then we have three other projects, Douglas High School, the Sundance, and Aspen Park, Fremont 25 projects that should we have any remaining funds as these projects go out the door and they're completed, we'll roll that funding down to those projects. Historically, we've been able to, take care of another project or two or we'll go to the district and say, hey, you got $1 million project. There's 500,000 left over. Do you want to use 500,000 of your major maintenance to make that happen sooner than later? And so they'll pony up some of their regular major maintenance projects or money. You'll see there is an asterisk on this number one priority. We'd like to get that money moving as quickly as we can. Those are identified needs, just like we'd go through with the Mercer study. We need to get them out on the street as soon as possible. They're all based upon condition requests. In the past, this is the same structure that we've used in the past. We're looking at districts that have X amount of dollars of major maintenance versus how much major maintenance they have coming in their portfolio. And those that are probably the highest out of kilter, the highest percentage that they don't have enough major maintenance to hit what they need. We move those up to the top and they kind of float to this list. Isn't anything unusual in this, Mr. Chairman? If you look at the project types, typically what we'll see is roofing, plumbing, and HVAC. We do have a parking lot there, but it's just, again, typically identified major maintenance needs that need to be done versus the amount of money that they have available in their major maintenance account and trying to get that squared up. Since we started this process of looking at available major maintenance, and we look 3 years into the future. So we say, what do you have coming up in the next 3 years? How much money do you currently have? How much more money are you going to get in your major maintenance program? 2 years ago, about 3 years ago, I guess the request would be, we had one district that needed 1,200% more major maintenance than they had funding available. Since we've started kind of isolating these component projects the way we have and looking at those that are out of kilter, I think this year we had a couple of districts that were about 200% more in what they needed for major maintenance than what they had available. So I think we're doing a pretty good job of chipping away. Hopefully we'll get to that 1-to-1 ratio and we can probably downsize some of these major maintenance requests or component requests in the future. And so, you know, we're still going to have those from time to time, particularly on your smaller districts that don't generate a lot of major maintenance. And you may see, you know, 2 or 3 things hitting at the same time and we'll have to come back. But I think we are moving forward and getting this back to where hopefully with the additional major maintenance going from the 2% to 2.5%, if we get the 135% versus the 115, that'll add some more into there. And again, try and close that gap for needed major maintenance in the future. So any requests or any information you want on any of these particular projects, Mr. Chairman?
Any questions? Representative Bratton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just double checking on Sheridan 2. Is that it says the high school, but is that the junior high roof?
I'll have to check, but I believe they got funding for the junior high roof in the previous appropriation.
Okay, and
I
then
think
this
we're asking for the high school
for the high school.
for
Okay.
upcoming.
Right. Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Chairman?
Anything else? Committee?
Our second
job.
priority,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, is the design phase. And if you look at the design and the construction, they're not the same projects in there. We'll talk a little bit about that when we get in there. They're not design and then construction kind of follow, and there's an offset in there. And so the first project, priority number 2, first project is Frontier Academy. That's one of them that as Shelby was going through the capacity, that was, I think, the 155%, the highest in the state for capacity. In that particular project, we're looking at perhaps a remodel for the Jackson Elementary School to accommodate their current alternative school situation. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, if they're looking at 75 students is what they're hoping to see. That would drive about 15,800 square foot. That existing building is about 33,000 square foot. So you'll see some funding requests for some demo. That's really a partial demo. Not on this one. Okay.
That's
Rendezvous. Okay. So we're going to try and fit that into that right size building. Again, that's one that we've had a number of conversations on at regular square footage for that district. So.
May I chime in?
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, so that money value is there to just renovate that 15,000 square feet that they need for those 75 students. So the district may go in and supplement with some of their district funds to do some of the other spaces in that school, but we are only funding the square footage needed for 75 students.
The next is Lusk Elementary. Lusk Elementary, that's a K-6. It was built in 1987. 72,000 square foot. The capacity for that particular building is at about 44%. And we project 8 years out that it'll be at about 31.5%. So again, declining capacity. It's really a bunch of big ticket items that are driving that one. We need some work on the masonry, the lighting, the parking lot, the fire alarm system, the roof, HVAC upgrades, and electrical. So that one's based on condition situation for that particular school. So again, Mr. Chairman, that's $1,173,401. The next design is for Douglas Intermediate Elementary for $4,970,950. And that particular school, that's a elementary school. It's a 2-3 as far as the grades. When you look at the K1 in the next couple of years or so, we're looking at how that's moving through. And so we're looking at some renovations, addition, potentially a new school. And I think Shelby could give you a lot more information on the Mercer that was done there if you need to. So.
No, Mr. Chairman, this is, we're just making the design request at this point in time. We have tried to estimate here the highest cost alternative. So it will either be this number or less, depending on where that Mercer completes at. We do plan to have that Mercer before the commission in September. And depending where that final dollar figure comes out, we may adjust this if it needs to be adjusted. If we do, it will be down, not up. We tried to set this at the highest option that we're looking at.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, there were 6 different potentials that they're looking at for that particular Mercer as we're refining that down. And again, if that moves down, we'll bring that number to your LSO staff when we have that so they can adjust that for the bill that you'll put out there in October. Same thing with the governor's budget. When we move forward with the governor in our conversations with him, if that moves down, we'll let him know the same. So the budgets are kind of lined up for what you have in the governor's budget.
And Mr. Chairman, you'll also see this is not one because of the alternatives that we're looking at. We do not have a construction request. We want to let that work its way all the way through. We can start the design. We'll have a much better figure for construction next year. And so we'll make that request next year.
Questions on design, Mr. Chairman?
I think we're good.
Okay, construction phase, that's our number 3 priority. Rollins K1, that's $2,415,887. Again, that one does have an asterisk next to it. We'd like to have that money available immediately for that particular project. The second request is for Frontier Academy. We've talked about that. That's for the construction phase of that, $9,886,125. And then our third request is Lusk Elementary, $9,658,825. So the priority number 3, the total is $21,960,837.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions, committee? Okay, please proceed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Demolition projects. It's a total of $7,002,700. Fremont 25 Rendezvous School, $2,824,428. In Albany 1, their Laramie Athletic Field Stadium, $1,382,253. And in Fremont 1, this is in Lander, their North Elementary. This school they haven't used for quite a few years. It's been more of a storage. They had a program or something that kind of move in the summer. For those of you that may be familiar with it, it's an old Quonset hut looking building. It's kind of that rolled steel, blue color. We were thinking this was going to be much higher because we thought it was just full of asbestos when we had those reports done. Luckily, there wasn't asbestos in it, but it sure looked like it was. So anyway, $2,796,019.
Any questions on demolition? Okay, keep going, Director.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, you do have your exhibit handouts. That's these 3 pages here that were given out to you. And so that one is a ask of $54,101,144. That's broke into 2 priorities, the district priorities. So we asked the districts, what's your number 1 priorities and what's your number 2 priorities? You'll also note there that this includes the 6%. So when we get down to the unanticipated funds, we did not include that 6% in that priority number 6 below. So this has when we went back and reviewed those, we talked to the districts, we asked them, do you guys have these designed, or are we going to have design? We looked at ancillary or additional funds such as testing, those sort of things. Did all of those things that John talked about in that budgeting sheet. Have you taken a look at those in your request on this page that you see back here that came through? And then we include, like I say, the 6%. So this is a fairly high dollar amount. The other thing to note is that this is $10 million. We took 10 million out of that from this appropriation we received last year. So if you'd total those up, it'd be higher. That 10 million, again, we're looking at design for vestibules throughout the state, bollards throughout the state, and then that we're figuring about 7 million, if I recall, for security projects. So that funding was taken out of this sheet or this request for that 54 million. There's not a duplication or an overlap there. Questions on this particular item, Mr. Chairman, or any of the projects shown? At a high level, I'd say that some of your bigger project costs are for upgrades to the current system, some of your security systems, such as the Raptor system. And when we talk about that, you're thinking, okay, it's the security, the door locks or whatever, but it's not. It's truly that badge system. Their camera systems lock into that. Some of those are pretty sophisticated, where those camera systems can kind of detect or give you a heads up as to whether maybe that person's carrying a firearm out in the parking lot when they're coming through. It ties into a review or a background check, and then the badging and all of that when somebody comes to the school. So there are some large dollars tied to that, particularly in our larger districts, as well as there's a number of requests for vestibules and things like that too. What we're planning to do with the vestibule requests is we plan to go out and do design. Is it 51 vestibules throughout the state are still needed? You heard one of the districts talk about that today. And so looking at those, we want to do the design and then come back with a construction request later on after we get the designs done, because they fluctuate from, as you heard earlier, we've got the ability to partition off. We just need to move something to the whole thing. We got to move a front office or whatever versus just adding a second set of doors or things in there for those vestibules. So.
Anything, committee? Yeah, go ahead, Representative Heck.
Forgive me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, I'm looking at Bighorn County School District number 1, and they're looking for a walkway between the two buildings. We used to do that all the time in every kind of weather. Is there a security problem now with that, or?
There is, Mr. Chairman. It depends on the fencing and those sort of things. Actual responses and conversations with the district. So in some cases, depending on the distance between those schools, when those kids come out and the fencing, those sort of things, they could be exposed. We actually had one of our districts where they had a gunman that was on his way to the school, and their buildings were separated by a couple of 100 foot. And luckily he had to stop at the local bar to get a little bit more courage. And that particular school was more of a rural district. It was about a 35-minute response for law enforcement. That gave them time to call law enforcement to get there. They have an SRO, but what they were worried about after that particular incident, all that guy had to do was sit outside and wait for that guy to walk across and then take him out, and then they could go into school and do what he wanted to do. So some of these schools are very sensitive to that, that walking distance between buildings and things like that. So that's particularly on the rural schools. It's a situation where you want to buy as much time as possible.
Okay, follow up, Representative.
No, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director.
Yep.
Representative Garrett. Go ahead.
I guess I'll follow up to that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's been a little while since I attended Wheatland High School, but that campus was a whole bunch of separated buildings. How many schools have that kind of situation, and are you looking at the alternative of fencing the perimeter as opposed to building walkways?
Mr. Chairman, that is one of the things that we're looking at even in case of bollards. So you see a lot of your individual schools. So in Cheyenne, you basically have an individual school, so you don't have to worry about a walkway. But the kids can just go out and start playing in the playground, and right adjacent to the playground is the street or whatever. So what's to keep somebody from driving through that fence? So in some cases, we've got the school districts asking for either bollards or what we're perhaps looking at, if you look at the interstate, to keep down on the number of bollards, but do the same protection. The cable guardrail medians, you can put that up around the outside to keep somebody from driving through that fence or driving through the school and getting into there. Now, there are districts that put the fencing or the slats through the chain link fence to make it a little bit harder for somebody just to see through and shoot through. But we have a lot of schools around the state that have chain link fencing. Again, if somebody just wants to sit out in the parking lot, they can take advantage there. Now, the SRO meeting that we went to, there was a lot of good discussion on those sort of things. And it was enlightening but scary at the same time, seeing what the school districts and particularly the SROs are dealing with these days.
Anything else, committee? Okay, please proceed to the final three priorities, Director.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Unanticipated funds, that funding amount is the 6%. We put that on our design, we put it on our construction, our demolition, and our component projects is where that 6% comes from for the total of $3,954,878. Priority number 7, Mr. Chairman, is planning funds request. Currently, and this was talked about a little bit earlier, is we're using an awful lot of money for these Mercer studies. And so currently we have $2.9 million remaining. We're asking for another $1 million. We started out a couple of years ago with that $5 million in that total account. Right now, we're looking at about 8 condition and no capacity Mercers. We also have 13 non-educational buildings we're looking at. So based on what we're spending currently on our Mercer studies, we're projecting that we'll probably need about another $1 million to keep working through all these Mercers that are coming up. So.
Anything, committee? Okay, Director.
Okay, thank you. And then the last is Land Opportunity Fund. We'd like to try and keep about $750,000 in that fund. You never know when a piece of land around a school might come up, might be something they need for a parking lot. When the school was built, there were houses there. There's land that comes available sometimes that they can, for an addition next to or something like that. And it could have been 15, 20 years. These schools were landlocked. And so right now, we've got currently $455,000 in that account. And then we anticipate a purchase of about $150,000 coming up here fairly soon. So that knocked that down closer to the $300,000 mark. And again, so $295,000. And like say, historically, when we've replenished that pot, it's been about that 250 million or 250,000 amount. And we're still would be below that. But I think based on our look back over time for purchases, I'm comfortable with that 295,000.
Okay, thank you, Director. Doesn't look like anything on that one.
Okay, and Mr. Chairman, that completes the budget requests by priority order. The next page on page 94, you can see the breakdown through our whole funding scenarios such as operations, engineering, technical, major maintenance, or modular, charter school leases, charter school contingency fund. We're not asking for any money in those. And then the next one's down below. And again, that asterisk for construction and component project requests kind of denoted there.
Okay, thank you all. Appreciate it. That takes us to the end of it. Committee, any overall questions? Any questions on any one of the things that our folks shared with us this afternoon? Any final thoughts from you, Director?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Just appreciate your time and kind of going through all the details of the annual report.
Okay, thank you. So
Okay.
what I've got in mind to do, committee, is we'll obviously look forward to public testimony on this. And then we can talk about how we want to handle this budget request. My sense is, and we can talk about this, but we do have a third meeting. A lot of this information is pretty new, and public hasn't seen it for very long, so we may want to consider that. So that's where we're at this afternoon, and we'll discuss. How about that? Thank you, guys, very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Committee, we can take a quick break. I'm inclined to do that, and we'll come back at 4 o'clock and finish up. Okay? Let's take a break, and we'll go to public testimony right after the break. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I'm gonna take a quick break.
Now, I think I was gonna lose the committee if I didn't take a break. Don't you think we push these to the?
Well, I think we need the bill drafted, right?
Yeah.
So we just.
Oh,
gonna
yeah, we
draft it
gotta
up.
request a bill
Yeah.
draft.
Yeah.
Okay.
Panic a little bit.
Okay, let's get back to work. Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to take a quick break. We finished up with our department on a supplemental budget request that would be forwarded. We would welcome any public testimony, any public comment on what the director and his staff went through over the last couple of hours. Any public testimony, please come forward. Absolutely. If you would state your name again. Then you can state your business. Good afternoon.
Dr. Penny Bollinger, and I am the superintendent for Niobrara County School District. Our Mercer study was just completed. It is in the supplemental request. And we would like to thank the committee for completing the Mercer study, and the district 100% agrees with all of the findings in the Mercer study and are in support of taking those projects forward. So we just wanted to let you guys know as a committee that we are very much in agreement that those upgrades are needed for Lusk Elementary School. And just to give you an idea of some of the things that we deal with that project being completed in the 80s, we started the school year without air conditioning. And it is in a constant state of repair at this point with 83-degree classrooms. We were able to overnight parts in from the East Coast, and actually we're able to get it functioning again, but it is an ongoing process in our building just due to the age of the equipment. So I just wanted to let you know that we are very much in support of it. We're taking it to our board at the September board meeting and want to thank the committee and all of you for consideration.
Yeah, thank you, Superintendent. Appreciate that. And thanks again for making the way down this afternoon.
Very
Appreciate it. Any questions for Niobrara County? Okay, thank you. Further testimony. Anyone else have anything to comment on with regard to the pending supplemental budget? Okay, I'm going to close public testimony. Committee thoughts, discussion with regard to our supplemental budget. I would think that we would want to make a couple of requests, or at least one request for the supplemental budget. Senator Office, have you been thinking about a motion?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I have.
I thought so. I could see that in your face when you were walking up here.
Mr. Chairman, my thought is that we end up with two bills. So my first motion will be for the first bill. I move that we direct LSO to draft a supplemental budget, which includes all of the proposed budget recommendations presented by the department today, with the exception of school safety and security. So everything but school safety and security in the bill draft in our standard form. And that's my motion.
Okay, second by Senator Dockstader. Discussion, committee. I've just got a couple of comments. One is thank you for that motion, Senator. I was feeling pretty strongly in that direction, and I think it's spot on. So we do need a request, and we've got a third meeting, and that's the 25th. Is that correct? The 20th. That'll be in Casper on the 20th of October, and we would take up the supplemental bill at that time. Does everyone understand the motion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. That motion has carried. Ms. Heitrick, Catherine, staff?
Mr. Chairman, the only thing I would add is that at that October 20th meeting, when you forward that budget, recall there's a statutory obligation for this committee to submit the recommendation to the governor's office as well as the Joint Appropriations Committee no later than November 1st. So that's the reason for the timing of that October meeting.
So we need to get that work finished before November 1st. October 20th should be a good date for us to take that up. So committee, those two things, The second piece of that is the safety and security piece, and that will be a standalone bill based on the motion that we just passed. I think, how about if we, the vice chairman and I can think about this and visit with our staff. If we so desired, we could, a week in advance of our meeting on the 20th, have a Zoom call and discuss projects, including the director and staff, if they are amenable. So that's a possibility. I'm looking, Ms. Heitrick, does that make sense?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, you'd like to discuss some of the safety and security projects specifically related to districts, and that it's probably not appropriate to bring that up in a public meeting.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so we're not going to discuss safety projects in public, but if that makes the committee a little bit more comfortable with where we are going into the meeting on the 20th, maybe you can let the vice chairman and I know that. Senator Office, thoughts?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I do think that, I'd like to have a bill draft for that meeting, whether it includes tier 1 or tier 1 and 2, so that we can consider that at the meeting, but definitely not with specific call outs. And I would feel a lot better understanding what the projects are ahead of that discussion. So I would welcome the opportunity to have a Zoom meeting that was basically an executive session Zoom meeting so that we can talk about safety and security a little bit more explicitly without the associated concerns there, understand what we're looking at, and then, make a decision based on that, how much of the 2 tiers we would want to incorporate in the bill draft, and then work that at the following meeting. So from my perspective, I think we should have a bill draft for the next meeting, but it obviously won't have enough content for any of us to really feel comfortable knowing what we're voting on without having that pre-conversation.
Yeah, that's well put. Committee, I see a lot of heads kind of shaking yes on that. We will go to work and try to find a day, hopefully about a week out from our meeting on the 20th of October. That will get us all up to speed on what is contained in that safety and security piece. And then we'll be prepared, I think, a little bit better on the 20th to take a vote and decide, what we want to do with it. That sound okay? Any other thoughts, Senator Dockstader? Okay. Senator Love, anything? Representative? Anybody? Okay, I think we're good. Okay, we've got insurance issues out there, school insurance, and so let's see if we can get Director Bach up here. Miss Edwards, maybe, and Mr. McComey, you'll be on deck. You're the next batter up on this one.
Good afternoon, committee. I'm Director Bach with the Department of A&I.
Been a while, Director. It's good to see you.
It has been a while.
Nice to
Good to
see
see you too.
those staff members with you there.
Yes.
Hi.
Andrew Coleman, he is the administrator for the General Services Division, and Aaron Edwards, who is the risk manager for A&I and the state. I am going to turn it over to Aaron, mostly for this. She's the expert. I am not. So I want to turn that over to Aaron.
Thank you, Director. Mr. Chairman, committee, my name is Aaron Edwards, as Director said. I've been working in risk management since 2017, so 9 years, and then as the state risk manager for 7. And throughout that time frame, I've managed the procurement of our insurance for the state, which includes all of our properties, contents of buildings, land, everything like that. And so this came to us with a question on the school districts and the experiences that they've had regarding their insurance, deductibles, stuff like that. Especially it seems that the August 1, 2025 hailstorm that we had last year kind of brought to light a lot of these issues that are coming up. So the question was asked, what can be done? And we have some options and it varies. It ranges from the state kind of staying back and saying, here's what we can help you with versus the state completely going the extreme opposite and taking over the insurance, the claims process, all that good stuff. So really, there's a lot of different options that can take place within that bar of differences. There's not really one that works well more than another, and it's hard to say what might be good. The survey that the State Construction Department sent out to the schools will give us some good data that we can look at that can potentially narrow down which options might be more amenable to all parties. So without that information yet, it's hard to really pinpoint what might be the best, most efficient, and most beneficial remedy for the situation. So I believe we sent in our white paper with what we do and with implications to state risk management should we dive deeper into this, and then along with our table that kind of demonstrates what we've done with our property insurance over the last 5 fiscal years. And with that, I'd be open to any questions.
Ms. Edwards, thank you for teeing that up and hitting it down the fairway. Any questions for our risk manager? I guess I've got one. If we were to move in an entirely different direction and have the state take that over, what kind of impact would that be on your division, like on your agency? Any thoughts on that?
Mr. Chairman, absolutely. So we've outlined a lot of the bigger impacts that we could think off the top of our head. I think that there might be some that we don't know until we actually get to that point. But the most immediate would be staffing and office resources, stuff like that. If we were to go to the extreme where the state takes over everything, we would need way more staff than what we currently have to handle the increase with doing the procurement process for insurance, handling the claims, managing the fiscal part of that, all that. So we would need a significantly larger appropriation for that. We would also need an appropriation to be able to pay for the insurance if it was determined that the state would just outright pay for that versus the school districts buying into that. So we would still need that appropriation. That would also have to include deductibles. Premiums are one number, but then you have the deductibles that you pay on top of that if there is a claim that's filed. If there is a claim that is filed that is less than a deductible, then that would come out of our funding as well. So we would need that appropriation for that part as well. We would also need a separate actuarial contract and study. That would probably be the cheaper impact of all of them, just to have our actuaries do a separate study for us as far as that. And we would, as far as outside of our office, we would need the cooperation of the school districts. What we found over the years in taking information to our brokers through our insurance carriers is the better data we have, the more information we have when we go out to negotiate with insurance carriers, we can present ourselves as a better risk. So we have all that data to say, look, this is what we do with our buildings. This is how we shore them up. This is how we take care of them. And our agencies facilitate that by getting that data to us and helping us with managing that claims process and making sure things are done appropriately and in a timely manner. We found that that helps to decrease potential insurance costs. Premiums are expected to go up a little bit year over year. We found that stuff like that can actually decrease that impact and stuff like that. So yeah, we definitely would need the cooperation of the school districts to help us facilitate a better impact with that.
So Ms. Edwards, is it your feeling, gut feeling or knowing that we would save enough out across the state to make a difference, to make a move, a policy move that drastic?
Mm-hmm.
There'd have to be a good reason to do it, right? So,
Yeah.
so what are your thoughts on that? Are you going to save those districts out there the kind of money that it would take for us to then draw those costs back and distribute them to your division?
Mr. Chairman, that's a very difficult question to answer. I think that the answers to the survey that the State Construction Department put together will help us figure out what that may look like. It really depends because we have some school districts that go through a risk pool and we have others that go through a commercial carrier. And then the question is, how do they procure that? Are they letting their risk manager negotiate that, or are they letting somebody who maybe doesn't have that experience negotiating it and maybe they don't know what that looks like? Or are they going through a broker where brokers have access to way more markets to include around the world that can have different companies kind of combating each other, trying to battle to get that business, so to speak. So it just really depends on how each school district does their procurement of their insurance. And we would have to look into that to say, is something we would do going to make that different or not? And just how are they negotiating it? How are they doing that?
Director?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, Chairman, that I think that Representative Geringer and Senator Love are aware of the employee group insurance issue of the school districts coming on. It's the same difficulty to figure out what that number is. But if we do have the survey, and we're going to get more information too on school districts on the EGI side. So we need that information to really make an educated guesstimate on where it would be. We've looked at some of the premiums that they have. Some of them don't really make a lot of sense. I think it'll make sense after the survey comes back for October.
So Director, are you aware of any other state agency in another state that covers all of the insurance issues, including schools, in another state? Have you run across that at all? I'm just curious.
Chairman, I have not. That doesn't mean there isn't one out there. I belong to an organization of chief administrators, so I can send that out to them and we can get a pretty good discussion back on where we are with that if you would like me to. I will be here in October and then I'll be going to Baltimore for that meeting. So I could send that question out to all the states and they're pretty good about getting back to us on it.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm sorry if these questions were questions that you filed answers to. I have not seen the follow-up material that you mentioned of the details and can't find that at this point in time. So I'll look for that after this, but I did have some questions about how ANI currently operates with our existing property that is managed by ANI. And the first thing I'm curious about is how we do it. You said that you work with a multitude of insurances. Do we have our own internal pool that we utilize up to a reinsurance point? And if so, can you talk to us a little bit about how we manage the insurance and the self-insurance of our own assets, up to what point and how that works?
Sure.
Go ahead,
Mr.
Ms.
Chairman,
Edwards.
Senator Rothfuss. So we do, it's multiple different levels. As you said, there are the reinsurance layers. So the state is self-insured up to a certain point. And we've made the decision that for us to insure a property through a commercial carrier is the best way to do this. And that hailstorm last year is a perfect example. If we were completely self-insured, the state would be looking at about a $41 million bill, which our pool is not designed to handle. So what we do is we go out, we have a broker that does all of the shopping for us. So we say we need these lines of coverage. They go out to the market and they find carriers that want to put in a bid for us, that say they want to do business with us. And then they kind of compete against each other to see who's going to give us the best deal, the best coverage, and the best rates, et cetera. And so we look through that and at the end of the renewal process, make a determination on who our carrier will be for that forthcoming fiscal year. With regard to property insurance, I can give you a breakdown of what that claims process kind of looks like and those deductibles. So a state agency experiences a loss, they'll file a claim with us. If it's under the deductibles that are set by the insurance carrier, we handle that completely internally with the self-insurance program. And that's something that our actuaries have helped us with deciding what kind of funding we need to have in the pool to be able to cover that. If they file a claim that goes over those deductibles, such as the hailstorm, it's kind of that's the best example I can give. then that's the point where we're going to file a claim with our insurance carrier, and they'll step in, they'll bring out their adjusters, and they'll say, here's what it's going to cost to repair or replace. And then we start moving forward with that. At that point, we, A&I, for example, we have a project manager. We put him on the task and he'll say, all right, this is what we're going to do. He works in conjunction with the adjusters, with the estimators, and then they build a package to start facilitating those repairs. If we have something that's not as complicated as that, we let the state agencies handle that. So let's say they had a car run into a building. Minor repairs, we'll let them handle the contracting process, the procurement process. As long as they follow the state procurement laws, we let them handle all of that. And then at the end of it, we go ahead and pay those bills. Now, when you talk about the insurance, there are two different kinds of deductibles. When we go through our carrier, we have a standard deductible and we have a cat loss. So standard deductible is anything that is not a wind, hail event, a tornado, a flood, something that's a catastrophic loss. Ours currently is $100,000 standard deductible. That's kind of the going rate. The cat loss deductibles over the years have been anywhere from $500,000 to $250,000 per occurrence or per claim, depending on how the carrier has structured it. Right now, our cat loss deductible is $250,000. So anything over that $250,000 for a catastrophic event, that's where we're going to file those claims with our insurance carriers and say, hey, we need your insurance to kick in and we need your assistance. So in a nutshell, very quick nutshell, that's how we handle those property claims.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick follow-up. What is the total valuation of your insured assets for the state? So what is your total coverage of assets?
Gosh, I'd have to go back and look. I want to say it's somewhere upwards of 20 billion, but I'd have to go back and just double check that. That includes land, buildings, infrastructure within the state parks, monuments, markers, historic markers, anything like that. Buildings, of course, and the contents within those buildings.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple more questions. And so
Sure,
we did just get the handout. So
Yeah, we
I
did.
have that now. That's helpful. I see roughly a $3-ish million premium in the years that have already happened, and then that's moving up. I'll ask about moving up in a second, but $3 million on around $20 billion of assets. Right now, the state is spending around $11 million per year on expenditures for property insurance across the school districts. And so I guess one of the things that would be useful to understand for the October meeting would be what the implications of that addition would be. So based on the valuation of our schools, kind of looking at your rates, if we took it on, would that potentially lead to a significant savings for the state? Would it be roughly the same? I think that's a useful thing for us to find out. It sounds like that's a hard thing to estimate, but that's, don't know quite what the best approach to estimating that would be, but that would be a very useful thing to understand, is whether there's savings there. The other question that I just now see is that it looks like it's going to go up by a substantial amount from 2026 at $3 million of premiums to what I have is $4.5 million in 2027. Is that because of the large hailstorm? Why do we have a 50% increase looking at us for the state?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Rothfuss, yes, that's partially correct. So we had a 9% increase in our total insured value between 2026 and 2027. So that accounts for part of that. And then the 17% rate increase in part because of that hailstorm. In addition to that, we had a fire up in the Dayton, Sheridan area that affected some elk fencing with the Wyoming Game and Fish. That was about a $2.4 million loss. And so we had to file a claim with that as well. So those things in conjunction have led to an increase in premiums, which is not unheard of when you have a big hit, like especially with that hailstorm. That's the biggest contributor to that. The other part of that is the actual increase was more around $1 million up to $4 million. What we did this year, our insurance carrier, the best they could do with, I mentioned a wind hail deductible. So what a lot of insurance carriers have gone to, instead of a flat fee of $100,000 or $250, is they put a percent for wind hail related events. So they'll say, we're going to charge your deductible of 3% of whatever your building's value is. And they went ahead and increased that to 4% for our renewal process. We said, well, give us an option to buy that down or do something that we can do with parametric insurance. Let's look into that we can potentially reduce any impact if we do have another large wind hail event like we did last August. So what we came up with was we bought down from a 4% deductible down to a 1% deductible for our top, our highest 7 valued buildings, most of them here in Cheyenne. So if we were to have another hailstorm on those buildings, we would only be paying a 1% deductible, which would be a few $1 million in savings on the deductible side of things. So that added about $500,000 to that premium. The way we looked at it was spend $500,000 here to buy that down. We get another catastrophic storm like that, and we're saving the state a few million on those deductibles.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, one more question. So with EGI at this point, we offer our districts on a district basis the opportunity to choose to participate in EGI, but they're not required to participate in EGI. I think that's a helpful option. We obviously have one of our larger districts engaged in that. Have you given any thought or what would be the plausibility of offering something similar on a district basis where they could participate in the state's property coverage under the terms and conditions that the state utilizes? What are your thoughts on that, Ms. Edwards?
Ms. Edwards, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Rothfuss, yes, that's part of one of those options that we kind of looked at within that realm of how much would the state potentially be involved, whether it's very minimal to none or extremely involved. And so that was one of those things kind of in the middle realm of a potential option of the school districts coming in of some level to receive our help if they wanted.
Mr. Chairman, another.
Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the things we've talked about on the Joint Education Committee at a variety of times is the challenge the districts have of selecting policies that are appropriate based on state law or acknowledgement of state law, and areas where we might have claims limits or claims liability limits based on the Government Claims Act and other things along those lines. I don't know how much of a influence that has specifically on the property side of things, and it may not have significant implications, but it's my understanding that sometimes the districts are purchasing kind of umbrella coverage that covers a lot of different things and doesn't take advantage of the unique nature of the state. For this discussion with regard to state property insurance relative to what the districts are doing, is there any area where the state enjoys a beneficial advantage relative to what the districts might be facing in the insurance market, just based on our situation as we are a state, as opposed to we're just entering into an insurance market and trying to buy insurance?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Rothfuss, it's possible. One area I could think there might be an advantage is that we do use the help of a broker to help us with that. And, some brokers charge exorbitant amounts of money. Ours luckily does not. And so it's entirely possible that a school district maybe spoke to some of those brokers and thought we can't afford to pay for your fees. And so then lost that benefit of having that expertise and that access to such a wide variety of markets. And so that might be one area where the state benefits that we're able to have that assistance from our broker.
Senator Dockstader.
Process on that. How does the broker, how does he get the information that we have, that you talk about him or her being able to drop those prices for us? What information do they work off of?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Dockstader, we work with our brokers to provide a ton of data. So we go through our renewal process that starts about February, March-ish every year and goes right up until the July 1 start of the new fiscal year. So in property insurance terms, just specifically that, because I could go on a lot of data points for all the other lines of coverage. But for property insurance, we have a property schedule in our office that we maintain where state agencies provide the information on their buildings, the size, structure, any kind of changes within them, contents, the values of the contents, stuff like that. And then we send that up to our broker. They take all that data and aggregate it. They send it up to the market and to their contacts within all those many different insurance carriers. And then the insurance carriers will look through that and decide if they think that they might want to do business with the state. And then they'll say, yes, we'd like to, or maybe they have other questions and they'll ask for more information, upon which we'll go back, gather that information and send that. So it's kind of a back and forth process of sending them a bunch of information to begin with relevant to each property and what it looks like, and then just additional information as we go through the months-long renewal process.
Understood. Thank you.
Mhm.
Anything else, committee? Director? What else?
Thank you, Chairman. I think that we could have some more information once the survey is complete, and I can work with state, with school facilities, with Dell, and get that information and maybe dial it in a little closer.
Boy, that'd be great. Director, as you can tell, there's quite a bit of interest
Mhm.
in, if there's a way to do this thing better,
Mhm.
then maybe we can find that.
Right.
So appreciate it.
We can do that.
Andy, anything? Good to see you. Yeah, thanks for backing these guys up.
Mr. Chairman, one more
Appreciate
question.
it. Yeah, well, Senator Roth.
Sorry.
That's all right.
One other that came to mind with EGI, we have a liquid risk pool of funds that is available for our payouts. And do we have a similar fund that is on the property side where we utilize that fund first and then we go to the insurance? Or how do we fund the claims that the state is going to be responsible for paying for? Where do those funds reside currently or come from?
Ms. Edwards.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Rothfuss, yes, we do have a pool. It's the state self-insurance pool. And that's what our actuaries tell us, the number that we need to keep that solvent. And they're the ones that give us that number of what we might be paying in each line of coverage, automobile, property, liability, any kind of that. And so, yeah, we keep money in that pool based on that actuarial study. And then as claims come in, as long as they don't exceed that deductible level, then we go ahead and just pull from that pool to pay for those claims.
Mr. Chairman, follow up on that.
Yeah.
Do you have that divided up by property class in any way, or is that just a general pool and you aggregate there? I was just curious how much is in that pool that would be specifically relevant to equivalent for school district property, so that I have a sense of what its current value is.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Rothfuss, we don't separate it out by claim, by coverage type. It's just that pool is what we use for all of our claims.
And what's it valued at? Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Rothfuss, currently it's valued slightly higher than normal. It's sitting up in the 70s million, but that's because we received a large portion of our insurance payout for the hailstorm. Normally it's well below that. So right about 40 million-ish is where it typically would be this time of the new biennium.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. And the final question I guess I would ask for next time is some consideration to what that would need to look like if we were rolling in all the school districts, or kind of a sense of what that would look like if school districts were opting in individually, how we would fund that and how much would need to be funded in addition, based on those types of policy decisions, because that would seem to necessitate an appropriation, a one-time appropriation. Then obviously it's going to change over time, but just to understand what that would look like from a policy perspective.
I'd also, Chairman, like to just mention, like with EGI, we pay all claims out of the pool. We don't have the insurance overages that can go through no reinsurance. So it is 100% self-funded on EGI, which is a little different on the risk side.
Andy, you bet.
Mr. Chairman, Andrew Coleman, GST Administrator. I did have one thing to add based on that line of questioning. One thing we were not sure in kind of coming up with scenarios of what this could look like on that scale of where we could help would be I guess the legislature's preferred funding mechanism, if that would be a separate funding source or would go through sort of the block to the school districts, and then the school districts would pay in. And we had talked about whether or not it would be all school districts or if that would be an elective, group or something like that. And that's one area that I think would affect the impacts on us as far as staffing and everything like that too, to know how much involvement the school districts would have versus what would all be on A&I staff.
Pardon me. Thank you for that, Andy. I think there's a lot of interest in what it would take to stand this up. And that kind of requires digging a little deeper with school facilities and with you guys to figure out if everybody just jumped on board tomorrow, what would that take? I think that's the curiosity of this committee, and that I know that's a lift, but I hope that kind of helps to know where we're at. If we can save some money out across the state through the districts and save just an administrative and hidden cost, that's where my interest is in too. We've got people all across the state having to deal with this. Well, what if we're dealing with it all in one spot?
And Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead, Senator.
So unrelated to school facilities, but we're having the same conversation in the Education Committee, Joint Education Committee, about liability and other types of insurance that districts have to pay. And you're probably not prepared to answer that at this point in time, but all of the same analysis applies, but even a little bit further, because we do have Government Claims Act limitations that are not necessarily recognized by the insurers. The insurers come in and they're like, I don't care if you have government claims, you're going to buy our policy. And this is what our policy says you can and can't do. And that leads to limitations by the districts for a lot of things, because they're worried about the insurance not allowing people to come swim in the pool, for example. And all day long, the district can say, well, we have government claims, immunity and protection. And the insurance says, we don't care. It says right here in the policy that you can't do those kinds of things. That's another area where there might even be more of a policy need to do it, because we do have protections that we're not realizing in the marketplace. That was why I was getting at the earlier question, do we have any protections? I don't know of any in this property side, but on the liability side, we certainly do. So I'd ask you to start thinking about that also. Just I'm asking on behalf of the Education Committee more than the Facilities Committee on this one, because it gets over into other areas where the districts are purchasing insurance, but not necessarily related to property. I don't know if you have any initial thoughts, but I know that's not exactly what you were tasked with.
We're kind of allowing him to do that Education Committee stuff, I gave him permission, and so we're a little bit off the freeway here, but no, go ahead, Ms. Edwards.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Rothfuss, I do have some thoughts, just based on what I've seen. That's another area where the state has a bit of a benefit in that we've been able to paint ourselves as a good risk, even on the liability side, with the data we get from state agencies. And so we've gotten ourselves into a position enough that when we go to the brokers and they bring an insurance policy towards us, or a policy that they think might work, we look at it and then we say, okay, but they have liability limits over the Governmental Claims Act. Right. And then they say, what do you need us to do? And I say, I need you to mark that down. So we have been lucky enough to be able to work with our brokers to where they can go back to those carriers and say, look, you guys got to mark this down. We can't have this. We have an excess liability policy, for example, that we've made abundantly clear in that policy that it does not apply to state law claims because of the claims, the tort cap limits. So that covers your federal law claims where there is no tort cap limit, but we've made it very clear that this does not increase our cap limit by the purchase of insurance. So we've been lucky enough that we've been able to do that because we can paint that good picture for our brokers to give to the insurance carriers. And so That's why we kind of asked on that survey, like who are they going for their insurance? How are they negotiating it? Do they have the ability to kind of use those things to negotiate? And so that's why we had those questions in the survey, just to see what might be happening. And it might be something similar there with liability. Do they have the ability to say, look, we can't have this because of the Governmental Claims Act. If you would like to do businesses with us, this is what we require. We've also made it abundantly clear, and carriers are happy to jump on when it comes to, for example, our cyber liability insurance. A lot of times carriers do like to jump in and say, we're going to handle it from here. We've made it very clear that if we have some sort of a cyber liability incident or some sort of a cyber attack, that our state attorney general's office will be the lead, and that our state ETS will also be the lead on any of the IT stuff, the forensics, anything like that. And they're very happy to do that because they're here to help us. They're basically just the reinsurance that's here to help and provide those additional resources, so to speak. And so we've been able to have those things with the carriers that we have. They're excellent to work with because they know that we're a good risk. We're doing great work here, and they feel comfortable with us. So I think there's ways that you can kind of look into that and say, what are the options? Can we do something different? Just looking at things from a different point of view with the carriers.
Thank you so much.
Good stuff. Thank you, Ms. Edwards. Really appreciate it. Director, thank you. I think we take this back up at maybe on the 20th of October. And anything that you find out, please write it down. We'd love to have you share it with us. Who knows, maybe we discover something that we might want to try.
And we do plan to be there in Casper.
Okay, thank you so much. Good to see all three of you. Thanks.
Thank you all.
Let's go to the department, state construction. Get you guys' thoughts on this.
Thank you, Mr.
Good
Chairman.
afternoon.
As you heard, we've sat down and tried to craft the questions from the insurance experts that we sent out to the districts. But before I get to kind of some results as of Friday night that I had our folks kind of compile, on page 9 or page 3 of 7, agenda item 9, we've got an exhibit there, and it shows the school districts in 3 of the academies as to what they're paying for insurance. Starts back in 2019-20 and runs up through 24-25. So you can kind of see the dollars that are currently out there by district broke down. And as you'd expect, the larger districts, more buildings, the more insurance costs that they're spending. But as was previously testified on, you can also see the increases from 19-20 through 24-25. Pretty substantial. When you look at that, it's gone up 100, 200, 300%, on the average across the districts. So right now, if you look at 24-25 timeframe, the districts are paying a little over $11 million for their insurance, property insurance. So, and again, this is compiled. This came through WDE. The next page, page 3 through 7, is the questions that we sent out to the school districts, asking, kind of how do they structure their insurance? Do they go through a broker, self-insured? Who kind of negotiates those contracts? What type of deductibles they have? What are they paying? Those sort of things. And so as of Friday night, we had 37 school districts that responded to this. It's a little tough in some cases to get a good answer for what we may need because they just answered NA on some of them. But I don't think you'll see a big shift as if we get any more information from the districts. And that's another issue if we're trying to look at all the districts and get this kind of compiled for ANI to do some of the homework that you talked about. We typically don't get a response back from every district. I've never seen it, at least in the time I've been here. Matter of fact, the responses that we got so far, I'm pretty pleased with. That's on the higher end of what we generally get from the districts. So right now, again, we've got 37 districts, and the first question up there is, how is your district's facility property insurance currently structured? And 67% or 25 of those said a risk pool, and then 12 of them said an individual policy. And again, these answers were kind of our staff just looking at a generality to some of the nuances. There's a lot of individual information per district. The second question then was, and you heard this from ANI's testimony, how many of them are using a broker or going out or, as an RFP, or are they just negotiating a contract? And what we found was 18 of those, or 48%, are using a broker, 17 said NA, and 2% said RFP. So I'm assuming, and this is an assumption, that the 17 are kind of negotiating their own contracts. We had facility property insurance policies and premiums are negotiated through a brokerage service. Is your broker paid by the percentage or a flat fee or those sort of things? 28% said NA, and 5 said a flat rate, and 4 said a percentage. If the facility property insurance premiums are negotiated, is your broker paid with a flat fee or a percentage? That question was duplicated on this answer, but it was, is the facility property insurance policies or premiums negotiated by your district? What position is your office, or who handles that? And so the answer there was mainly it was as you would expect, it's the district's business office, the business manager, or business service departments. It's a collaborative, that was 27 of them. 3 of the districts said, well, the superintendent's involved in that, along with the chief operations officer, and then in conjunction with an insurance broker or risk management specialty specialists that look at the market coverage. And then exempt or non-exempt status, 7 districts said they do not negotiate these properties, reporting as not applicable or not currently negotiated. As you might expect, based on question number 1, question number 5 was, if the facility property insurance is structured through the risk pool, please specify the name of the risk pool. And so all 25 that said they're in a risk pool or in the school risk retention program, or the SRRP. And you heard some testimony at the last meeting that said, there is this risk pool out there that many of the districts belong to, but it's generally your smaller districts, because your risk pool couldn't hold or stand what it would cost for some of the larger districts, such as Laramie 1, maybe Natrona. Just the dollar amounts are so high that it would, put at risk the risk pool. And you'll see this in some of the other reporting as you kind of come down through here. So question 6, what's your school's district's total value, insured value, and for your properties? And it ranged from, as you might expect, 26 million to 900 million, because we've got some districts are a single school. And then we have, Natrona, we have Laramie 1 with dozens and dozens of buildings. And so a big range there. And we kind of graphed this out, and it was hard to get the information on a graph, but you saw many of the districts just kind of flat on the graph. And then there was 2 districts, again, Natrona and Laramie 1, that just were off the scale in the middle of these responses.
Senator Rothfuss.
Yeah, on that point, I would assume that something like 75% of the value of our state school assets are within about 5 districts. Ballparking it there a little bit, we can do that math, but
right.
One of the things we didn't discuss when A&I was up here, but the idea of potentially working with the rest of those districts, because they all have to go through the same struggle. They're not going to get as good of a deal. They're not going to have the capacity to work and negotiate. Perhaps pooling our smaller districts, whatever number that
Tier
is,
1 and Tier 2, yeah.
would make a lot of sense. And then leaving to the open market, that would be a substantially lower splash on A&I at first. And maybe over time, that could change also. But what are your thoughts on that approach? And I'll ask also, what is our total current value of our school fleet? I know we have that number, but I can never remember it.
Off the top of my head, Mr. Chairman, I don't remember. And I don't know exactly how that may correspond with our data versus what the districts are insuring. So again, Laramie One, say 900 million. We typically are looking at their educational buildings. So they do have non-educational buildings. They have sheds, things like that, that are also included in I'm sure what they're insuring versus when we're looking at cost replacement value of just the buildings.
Sure.
That two-tiered approach, Director, that the senator just brought up, that's kind of an intriguing notion. I mean, it's something to maybe put in your back pocket and think about.
Another question that came out of that was data distribution. So the majority of the districts reported between 30 million and 400 million to Senator Office's kind of comment there, kind of reflecting the diverse facilities. Again, when you looked, I tried to just say, let's keep it simple and give you guys a bunch of pie charts or graphs. And it was, like I say, it just overlapped so much. And they were just kind of a straight line with this big giant blip from two of the larger districts that responded to that in the middle. And so we came back and tried to interpret somewhat the overall comments from the 37 districts is to the handout that I provided. And then what funding sources are to pay for facility insurance over the past 3 school years, i.e. risk management funding. And so general utilization and primary source was the district's general fund, consistently identified as the standard funding mechanism across the vast majority. And again, I think that's coming, money that's coming through the block grant was indicated from what you saw from WDE on that $11 million. And then the state or specialized funding, the districts also use allocation from the school funding model, including the block grants, as well as the supplemental sources such as risk management funding, impact aid, housing funds, insurance funds, and special district funds to cover those costs. So I think one of the questions we need to clarify with WDE is it 11 million some accounting of all of these things, or is it only coming out of the block grant? Because if it's coming out of the block grant, there's 11. And from what I read here in this statement, a lot of their funding is coming from other sources and not the block grant. So is it much higher than the 11 million? I don't know. That's something we need to kind of look at. What funding sources were used to cover facility property insurance deductibles for any claims over the past 3 years? The school's insurance claims were filed. So i.e. major maintenance, risk management funds or special funds set aside. 22 of the districts said it's general fund usage. Most districts rely on the general fund to cover those deductibles. Major maintenance and special funds, 10 districts said they utilized major maintenance or special reserve for district funds. And then 5 of the districts noted a portion of the district that there were no claims in the last 3 years for those schools, resulting in no deductibles. So basically it was an NA answer. Then the annual premium amounts, the annual premium variance reported from a low of 21,600 up to almost $1.3 million in their annual percentages. And that kind of does correspond to what you saw with the graph from WDE on the block grant side, even though we got a little bit different terminology and a question above of where's your money coming from that you're using to pay for the grants. And then scope of coverage, while most figures represent property insurance, some districts included additional coverages from the reporting, such as liability, vehicle, crime, boiler and machinery premiums, individual components, basically premiums. And then standard deductible and wind hail damage. It looks like about $50,000 is what they're using for that standard deductible. But there was increments ranging from 5,000 to 25,000. Wind hail pretty much applied at that $50,000. It was often rate often paired with lower standard deductibles, kind of like what I do on my house. The wind hail is that percentage of that you heard A&I, and at least in the Cheyenne area, I've had to look at homeowners insurance a couple, 3 times because some here in just last couple of years, because the insurance who I was insured with were basically leaving the state, and or I had left my previous person because I had a straight deductible, and then everybody's been going to this 1%, 2%, at least in hail prone area of the state here is what I'm told. They're kind of taking what my insurance carriers are telling me. They're taking the Colorado model and it's drifting up into Cheyenne. And then variability in reporting. The responses indicated a wide range of deductible structures, including pre-occurrence versus per building applications, with some districts reporting unknown, inclusive and non-applicable status. But again, if we come back and look at it, it seems that it's a $50,000 deductible for wind hail, which I find from the previous conversation somewhat intriguing, because I think the state was many times higher on that deductible than what the school districts are. Senator Office, your comment on, what's our dollar value of our buildings. When we look at the statewide maintenance request or major maintenance, we've got roughly about 22 million square foot of school buildings, and we've got about 21 million in the state. Now that state for major maintenance calculations includes the community colleges and the UW. UW is slightly less square footage than the A&I or the stateside building square footage. So I get kind of that reference that you were talking about in total dollars there. Let's see. Annual premiums paid, again, the 38.6 to 1.46 million. And while many of the reporting specifically for property insurance, like I say, we had some other stuff in there. Then question 14, the last one, a deductible prevalence, a significant number of districts, applied that $50,000 per building. And that was often specified for the wind and hail damage. Standard deductibles varied from 10,000 through the utilization, then the increments of 5 to 25,000. And then alternate structures, some districts applied deductibles based on 1% of the insured value or specific occurrence, and limits to auto and property damage. So,
questions on the survey? Any questions? Very comprehensive. I'm going to try to push on through because I want to get any public comment this evening on this topic, but it sounds like we're going to have a chance to revisit this on the 20th of October, you guys. Any final thoughts?
No, we'll certainly work with A&I as this data comes in. Of course, this is just, trying to condense it, 35 comments or whatever from the district's 37 comments. So we'll be able to give all of that information in total to A&I. And then if they have questions from that, we'll circle back around with some of the districts, try and clarify stuff. So,
yeah, sounds good. Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Let's go to public comment on this. Would welcome any of you who'd like to come forward, and we're taking up insurance issues.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Kirk Schmidt. For 39 years, I was the risk guy that took care of this stuff. So I completely understand, but there's a lot of misinformation hanging out there. Just one example, you look at the premium from 7.9 million to 11 million. You just spent the afternoon talking about the costs of buildings. Okay, the insured value of buildings over that time increased significantly because of those costs. We're insuring buildings at the replacement cost, not what it cost to build it 10, 15,
Yeah.
20 years ago. That has a huge effect on what that number is. A couple of things, the numbers that are on here, that says property insurance, that's not what that is. That's total insurance that's reported to WDE. That's property, but that's also the vehicles. That's also the school board liability. That's also underground storage tanks. That's also cyber. That is total insurance, not just property insurance in these numbers. So that's a little misleading as to what it is. School districts are a lot more aware of liabilities and have been very good about taking care of that. The exposures that school districts have is a lot different. School board liability, where's that in the state? They don't have a. How many pupil transportation? Vehicle insurance is also in here. Has a whole different kettle of fish by itself. Has a whole different risk. Activities, it's just different. Mr. Chairman, in the front of this, it talks about the what's in the funding model. Back in 2005, Senator Coe had me put together a group of business managers to sit down with Doctors Pikus and Auden and go through the funding model and talk about different components. He wanted our opinion. Okay, did the funding model fund districts as a whole? I mean, we got into it. One of the very specific discussions that came up was in the funding model, if you went through and looked at all the information that was in there, there was no mention of property and casualty and liability insurance in the funding model. They had brought forward from the MAP model just what had been reported under the central administration part of the liability, part of the insurance. Okay, that's 10, 15% maybe of a total district's insurance program. The rest of it is under maintenance and operation. It's under technology now with cyber insurance. It's under transportation. It's not in the central office category, never has been. So when it says it's in the funding model, it's not, never has been. At the time, we had to look at the whole funding model as a program. I came to the conclusion, okay, as long as the block grant was a block grant, we can fund schools for everything. You know, during the last session, I was watching, and one of the esteemed senators got up on the floor, and what he said was very profound at the time because it's still true. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, Mr. Chairman, he said, we believe in local control until we don't. And that's what we're getting into. I mean, we're talking about, I mean, everybody's making the assumptions that school districts, we don't know what we're doing. You know what? We do. And we're pretty smart about it. And from an insurance perspective, we're pretty good consumers of it. And the risks that we have to deal with, the state, the school facility department, they don't comprehend the stuff that we've been doing for a long time. But just so you know, Mr. Chairman, this isn't the whole picture. This is a whole different kettle of fish. And be careful, if you want the true cost of property insurance, somebody's gonna have to go dig a lot deeper, and the property insurance isn't in the funding model.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt.
Chairman.
Appreciate it. Always good to see you. Further comment on property insurance this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jed Ciccarelli, I'm the Chief Financial Officer for Laramie County School District Number 1 here in Cheyenne. Considering the late hour, I'll try to be as brief as I can. I just want to talk a little bit about some of the unique circumstances around our property insurance program in our district, some of the challenges and how we've addressed some of those challenges. I would say that we might be a little unique compared to some of the other districts, but a lot of our experiences are very similar to what you just heard from the state and kind of summarizing how their plan works. We also use a commercial insurance broker who helps us negotiate the best pricing that we can get on property and casualty and liability insurance. Director McComey kind of talked a little bit about some of our figures, but our district is that 900 million total insured value that you heard a little bit ago. We'll be pushing that 1 billion mark when our 2 new schools come online. And maybe to Mr. Schmidt's comments a moment ago, every time we build a school, that gives our insurance companies and carriers an opportunity to recost what that replacement cost would be in our building. So we kind of see that ratcheting up every time we build a school. They take that data and they build that into our insured coverages amounts. Mr. Chairman, anybody who owns property in and around Cheyenne knows that we've definitely felt the pinch of hail and wind claims. My district is nothing different. If you look at the materials that you were provided in the committee handouts, our premiums have doubled over the last 5 to 6 years, just on property insurance alone. We're paying about $1.5 million per year for our property insurance to cover that $900 million. Now, premiums, again, are only part of the story. You heard about that earlier. The bigger issue for us is that risk that's being shifted to the district, in particular through that deductible progression. When I first started the district, we had a $50,000 per occurrence deductible. That moved to $250,000 per building per occurrence. Most recently, we moved to 1% per building per occurrence. And we're hearing from our insurance broker that we should be prepared for the markets to require a 3 to a 5% deductible here in the near future, maybe even at the next renewal. So if you kind of put that in perspective, our largest high school would be a multi-million-dollar claim and deductible just that we would have to cover as a school district. Mr. Chairman, in the interest of time, I won't talk a whole lot about kind of our risk history. I will mention in particular, in 2021, we experienced a pretty sizable hail storm that damaged 3 of our schools. At that point, luckily, we only had that $50,000 with. But as we saw those deductibles increases, our board kind of asked, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to prepare ourselves for that type of claim again in the future? So we've incrementally set aside money to an insurance reserve fund. We targeted $3 million, which wasn't arbitrary. We worked with our insurance company's actuaries and our claims experience to determine what our 3 highest valued buildings deductibles would be. And so we've been working towards that $3 million mark. So where we kind of have a policy conflict is that out of the recalibration bill, our ability to utilize those reserves was limited. At this point in time, we have the money set aside specifically by our board to address those deductibles, and accessing them going forward is what we're trying to contend with. So as a result of that, what are we doing today? So right now, because of the restrictions that we had that came out of the recalibration bill, is we've shifted that reserve to major maintenance. So before Mr. Knapp and the rest of his facilities team can start doing their facility planning, I have to say there's $3 million that you can't touch. And to put that in a little bit perspective, our annual major maintenance payment for this year will be about 14.9 million. So 20%. Right out the gate, we've reserved for the potential of deductible claims. And it'll be even higher if we move to that 3 or 5% going forward. So that's $1 less every time we reserve that money that doesn't go to things like routine replacement of roofs, HVAC, and ensuring our facility plan is covered. So, Mr. Chairman, I won't talk too much. I'll just tell you that we've covered some of the same alternatives that the state talked about. We looked at deductible buy-down policies. I've looked at public entity risk pools that aren't really structured to address a district of my size and our exposure and those type of things. So, one maybe possible simple statutory fix would be a narrow exception to allow us to use those special reserve funds that were created specifically for that purpose, for these deductibles that we know are going to continue to be a thing as we move forward. And that would cover those catastrophic insurance deductibles that, again, our board has already established those funds. Mr. Chairman, in the interest of time, I'll pause, see if there's any questions. And I think my colleagues here have some comments as well.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Rothfuss.
Yeah, thanks for those comments. Is there anything else? So the special reserve fund that comes into tweaking the recalibration, and that's a broader issue that needs to be fixed. But on this topic of what we're trying to explore, where we can find ways to reduce your cost and make things work better based on the fact that we are a full state instead of just a bunch of districts. Are there any other ideas? Now, you're a large district, so you actually have some market clout and you can probably get things to go your way a little bit better. But is there anywhere else that you see on the property insurance that as a state, we could help you to get either better prices, some sort of pooling, anything along those lines that you think might work and be worth exploring?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Rothfuss, I don't know if I have any great ideas on how that might work. I can tell you that our facilities team has worked to make sure that we have the data and the building roofs that are more desirable for our insurance company, EPDM versus other types of roofing. We're always focused on how can we make ourselves more insurable, and working with our broker. I think part of our limitation is that there's only so many insurance carriers that are able to address a district of our size. We're hoping that more insurance carriers come online or able to bid in on doing business with our district. But I think that's been the biggest barrier for us right now, is just there's a limited market for us as we've gone out and competed for those coverages.
Representative Provenza?
Thank you. Just want to clarify, when you say district of your size, do you mean that because your district's large or small in comparison to other states?
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman, Representative Provenza, yes, just in kind of scope compared to the market in Wyoming, we're one of the larger clients, if you will.
Senator
Mr. Chairman, you spoke of potential deductible changes. Was that just a drive-by, or was that a pretty legitimate warning, in your opinion?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Dockstader, I think it's a pretty legitimate warning. We, through the work of our insurance broker, negotiated to maintain our 1% this year. Maybe pleaded and begged is probably the better way to put it. And I do foresee that if our claims history continues, that same August hailstorm that the state was mentioning a while ago impacted our district as well. Fortunately, it was less on the building and facility side, more on our fleet. We had about a $500,000 claim just on our vehicles. So our claims history is probably going to be priced into those deductibles going forward. So,
Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You may not be able to answer this question, but one of my questions is how do we compare and how we've gone up in pricing compared to maybe districts outside of Wyoming? So this doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? Like there's a lot of state policy that does or doesn't exist in the state that other states may have that have influence over what insurance can require. One of the things we talked about in our last meeting was, in some ways, insurance companies know that they can hold us hostage because they know that the state's going to pay the reimbursement to you, and that it has to be taken care of because we constitutionally have to make sure that we're taking care of facilities for our kids. So I'm just curious if there's other conversations with folks outside of Wyoming, and what that increased rate looks like. And maybe there's no difference, I don't know. But that is a conversation, that it's something that I'm interested in understanding, is what's the state's role in looking at that and how that impacts you as a consumer.
Jed, take it away.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Provenza, I don't necessarily have my finger on the pulse of what other public school districts or local governments are experiencing outside of the state of Wyoming. I know that my colleagues and I compare notes quite frequently on where we are. Our district, my district in particular, is unique even compared to the other districts. You aren't seeing the same premium increases in Natrona, our nearest comparison. I've heard anecdotally that maybe our friends over in Albany County are experiencing some pressures as well. But I think it's going to be very unique to how those underwriters and those actuaries are assessing risk. For us in particular, living in Hale Alley has kind of been a main factor.
Okay. Further comment?
There you go.
Mr. Chairman, Mary Jo Lewis, Coordinator Business Services in Park Number 1 up in Powell, but I'm also the chairman of the School Risk Retention Program with the Property and Casualty Insurance. We have 31 school districts that are currently a part of this, that program. We do not want Laramie number one, just, so you know, just,
What?
you know, right off the bat, not
Have you
interested.
guys had a fight or something?
Yeah. They used to be part of the pool when I first started, long time ago. And we were quite happy to go, see ya, because their claims, just because of sheer size and location and all that, is just tremendous. The school risk retention program, just a little history, is a joint powers board. So a few of these questions, I take nothing away from school facilities department being asked to put this together, but the survey is not really applicable. You heard them say about, well, they answered risk pool, but then they said not applicable, not applicable, not applicable. That is true. As a district, I don't individually bid my school, my property and casualty insurance. I don't individually. So in reality, that is the correct answer. The school risk retention program as a joint powers board does the procurement, does the bidding, does all the exploration. We have a broker that we work with that is Gallagher Bassett nationwide. They obviously work with other school pools. And I think Terry Sterling on my right here is going to respond to a question that Representative Provenza asked about what is occurring outside of the state of Wyoming. The other thing I just wanted to bring up is you had asked school facilities department to give you insured values. They actually have the value, including infrastructure and all that. When you do property insurance, we're not insuring the land. Okay. No reason to. Okay. We're not insuring the land. We're not insuring necessarily the sidewalk. We might have flood insurance if you're in the flood zone. You may not be required to have that in our pool. So it just depends on where you're located. And if your district has land in a flood zone, then you're going to have that. So I just wanted to do a little clarification on that. We actually do appraisals. And we just had our last one on all of the buildings that are covered in our pool 2 years ago. So those are actual total insured values, but the amounts that are in here, and I'll tell you that for my district, includes vehicles, buses. That's total insured value as a total. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. One of the other questions I know that was, I think Representative Provenza asked as well is there something that would be helpful for us, or maybe it was Senator Rothfuss? I actually did tingle a little bit on the cybersecurity piece of that. That even though we have the option to buy that, it's based on our total revenue and that type of thing. It would be interesting to see. That's the one piece that I sort of went, okay, maybe that is a state thing that we could look at of cybersecurity insurance, because we're all faced with that and it can be quite significant. And actually getting someone to come in and defend that, it becomes a lot of work on the district side. So that would be very helpful. Anyway, so let's see, then now I'm going to turn it over to Terry. I think I've got my points.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
good evening.
Terry Sterling, I'm the plan administrator for the school risk retention program. And as Mary mentioned, we have 31 districts, and I guess just a clarification, first of all, on the survey, Ms. Lewis was correct that on the survey, the premiums that were reflected by the members of SERP did include property insurance, liability, auto PD, crime, boiler machinery, and pollution. So it's the whole package. We as a program do not necessarily break it down. When we give you your premium, it's the whole package. It includes all of it. As a program, we are governed by a joint powers board. Our governance is done actually by a board of trustees of all of the members. And so I believe Mr. Schmidt mentioned, school districts, they know their insurance. All of the decisions that get made from this program are made by the business managers that sit on that board. I help kind of facilitate things, but they make the decisions. So they are involved. They're already involved. In some ways, it seems this new mousetrap that's being discussed right now is already built. We already have it. We're self-governed. We're partially self-funded. And much like the others, we have a broker that we deal with. But maybe the difference is our retention levels. So we have our own retention levels, we have reinsurance. And so we shop that every year. We have a third-party administrator that we work with that works for us, not for an insurance company. So when a claim comes in, they have been taught that look for a reason to pay for this claim. Don't look for the typical insurance. And I've been doing this insurance thing for 30 years now, so I'm pretty intimately familiar with how insurance companies work. And as an old claims adjuster, it's like, all right, the first thing you did was, are there any exclusions as to why this shouldn't be paid? Well, for us, it's the other way around. Is there a reason this should be paid? And so it's our program. I think we say it's a program started by school districts, ran for school districts. We developed our own memorandum of coverage, our own policy. There was some discussion earlier about the Wyoming Government Claims Act. We have designed our policy through legal counsel to take full advantage of that. And so on the liability side, yes, it's written right within our policy. We don't need a special rider. Again, we wrote it so that we can take advantage of that. To Representative Provenza's question, as far as the national trend, it's all going up. Anybody that lives in a hail-prone, wind-prone area is seeing just, I can't remember the exact statistics, but each quarter we get a report that shows the $1 billion hail losses. You know, a part of the country, every time you turn on the TV, there's a flood. There's the incidence of $1 billion is, I mean, there's like 20, 30 of them a year just in the United States alone. And so it's a trend we're seeing nationwide. It was mentioned earlier that the number of carriers has narrowed, and as a result of that, everybody's kind of seeing the same costs go up. And so if you're fortunate to live where nothing bad ever happens in the weather, your insurance is probably okay. Forgive me, Mr. Chairman, I was making scribbles as people were talking. I just want to make sure I have. So the last thing I wanted to lead with, we talk about insurance increases and how it's all going up. We actually had a decrease this year in our pool. Our broker went out and again, they do their job. They scour liability coverage. They scour all of our various lines of coverage. Now granted, it wasn't a huge, like a 1% decrease, but in a time when premiums are going through the roof, ours actually was a decrease. And I guess with that, Mr. Chairman, I would certainly stand for questions.
Thank you, Terry. Appreciate it. Really valuable. Thanks for your comments tonight, all three of you. I want to make sure that if there's anyone else who wants to come forward this evening, we're charging on well past the 5:30 hour. And some of our folks have to be back here in the morning at about 8 o'clock, I think. So anybody else? Okay, we'll close public testimony. Further discussion on this issue. It sounds like we're going to revisit on the 20th of October. So we'll look forward to that. I don't think there's any action necessary on this one. Tanya, Catherine, I'd like to give you guys the opportunity to kind of wrap things up for us.
Yeah, certainly, Mr. Chairman. We have a number of bill drafts that have been requested along with those that'll be finalized, and we'll bring those to your October 20th meeting. I would just like to remind the committee that that meeting is October 20th. It is in Casper, and you will be required to act on the supplemental budget at that meeting. And we'll get with those individuals that are on the working group for the other items after the meeting to get a schedule together, as well as schedule that phone call for the safety and security measures.
Thank you very much. Anything else for the good of the cause?
Mr. Chairman, if I might add, that October 20th meeting is in the turntable conference room, not the roundhouse. If you go into the roundhouse, you'll be joining joint appropriations. So your meeting will be in turntable right next door.
I don't know if we've got the right code for that. Thank you for that. We'll look forward to it. Really appreciated the day, committee. Thank you all. We are adjourned.
Um,